continues. As soon as we get an up-to-date injury report, I'm using injury report in air quotes, we'll bring it to you as far as who's going to play tonight. But San Antonio, one of the NBA's best young teams, once again, kind of like the Patriots. They're not bad for very long. They find a way to get back to it. And they certainly have done that, building around Victor Wembanyama and a number of excellent young players. And, of course, the Spurs have benefited from the NBA draft lottery, probably unlike any other team. You could put the Cavs in there as well. Will Lady Luck shine on the Jazz this year? We know the deal. They are going to hold on to their asset, which they need to hold on to. I want to be very clear. I'm certainly on board with the plan. Just makes it difficult to try to tune in and night out, but we'll see if we can get some more growth from Keontae George and Ace Bailey and Bryce Sensabaugh and some of the other younger players. So we'll do some NBA on the program today. Tomorrow is the deadline in the world of college football as far as the decision to be made to expand the college football playoff bracket, to expand the setup. So right now it's 12. As you guys know, the conversations going on are about whether or not they're going to bring it to 16. And, you know, reading some of the stuff this morning, the bottom line is this is up to the Big Ten and the SEC. There's even a signed document by the Big 12 and the ACC and anybody that needed to sign it to be like, yeah, this is really kind of up to you. The reports are the SEC is pushing for 16 teams, and the Big Ten would allow for that as long as it is a pathway to an eventual 24-team setup. The Big Ten has been very front-facing about simply providing more opportunities for people to watch college football, and that's really what this is. It's a sport that's made for TV. It's a great TV show. So the more games, obviously, the TV partners are happier because they get more content. Sharon Moore in court today, looking for the charges to be dismissed. Obviously, Sharon Moore lost his job in spectacular fashion, and a job that now is filled by Kyle Whittingham, the head coach of Michigan. Speaking of head coaches, if you missed Morgan Scalley on Sean's show today, excellent interview. Morgan gave Sean about 20, 25 minutes. It was a really fun interview. Definitely a far cry from the 9.5 or 10 minutes that we used to get with Kyle. And definitely a lot of differences between the two of them, but they went in depth and they went in detail. We might bring that back around to you guys coming up a little bit later. I thought it was that good. Utah football picked up another transfer portal commit. Portal's closed, but as far as, you know, the players that are still in it, and Morgan told Sean earlier today that Utah football still has a couple of spots on the roster to fill via the transfer portal. And, of course, we talked about it a lot yesterday. We'll continue the conversation today. The Big 12 released their schedule. So we know the deal as it pertains to Utah, BYU. Big 12 title game is going to move to a Friday night on December the 4th. Texas Tech, have you seen Texas Tech's schedule? I mean, just chalk them in to the Big 12 championship game. So ultimately, we'll do some more schedule takeaways in the world of college football. Brian Daboll has interviewed for the head coaching position in Buffalo. Of course, he was the offensive coordinator there for a number of years, did a great job with Josh Allen. This is an interesting hire. Whoever gets the Buffalo Bills job feels like they are ready-made to not just compete, but to win football games. No team in pro football has won more games since 2020 than your Buffalo Bills. They're just looking for the last step to make it to the big game, the championship game, or the Super Bowl, if you'd like to call it that. So, NFL coaching stuff. We got college football schedule release. We got conference championship in the world of the NFL. The Utah Mammoth with an awesome comeback last night. They are on fire. They were down 3-0, won at 5-4 with a couple of Keller goals to get that win in overtime. RSL played a preseason match today. So instead of focusing on whether or not they should rebrand the team, they're actually playing soccer. I'm not going to pretend I know just anything about this team they played. They're in Portugal, and they won 2-1. I believe Dom Marczuk found the back of the net. We're just about 4 weeks away from the start of the season for Real Salt Lake, and a little birdie tells me that we may have a guest on Friday to announce, hopefully, some signings for RSL because, for all the conversation about, should we rebrand the team? Should we rename the team? Blah, 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 blah. You got to sign some players and win some matches first. So RSL in action. Got a little bit of everything on the program today. It's good to have you with us on this Thursday. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's my name, host of the program. Good to have you guys with us. Our first guest today, we'll talk about this deadline that's out there in the world of college football. What does Kyle Bonagura have to say about the potential of the CFP expanding? The, of course, news around here with Morgan Scalley taking over for Coach Witt. Big 12 schedule stuff and a lot of college football. Of course, we'll look back on the Indiana National Championship and look ahead to what we could potentially see across the landscape of college football coming up next year. Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune, covers the Jazz, writes some data stuff. Of course, RSL superfan will bounce around with a little bit of everything from Andy today. Amy Donaldson will be our guest coming up at 3:30. Our friend from KSL will do a little sports court with our friends from Handy and Handy, launching into the 5 o'clock hour of the show today as well. So Kyle Bonagura, Andy Larson, Amy Donaldson, little sports court on a Thursday, as we are often wont to do. Me, Spence Checketts, hello. How are you? Happy Thursday. And that guy, that young man, Porter Larson, on a Thursday afternoon. You know, you have an interesting perspective on this coaching change in Salt Lake City because for so many years, Coach's Show, you were kind of tech producer where you'd go up and you'd visit with Kyle, so you got to know him a little bit. And this is not a shot. This is not a shot to Kyle at all. But listening to Morgan today with Sean, and we might bring that back in the 5 o'clock hour today of the program. I know that there are similarities between the way they believe football should be played, but from a personality standpoint, they're really quite different dudes, and that's fine. I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong. They're just different dudes.
No, and part of that perspective of, sometimes being up there with the guys, in practice settings and whatnot is that I got to see that, right? Kyle operates like on a stopwatch, right? Every second of his day, every moment of his day is calculated, it is scripted, it is scheduled, it is intentional. Now, I'm not saying that Morgan's is not, but I've seen Morgan dancing. I've seen Morgan playing pranks on people. I've seen Morgan having a good time, laughing, right? It's a completely different personality. Although you mentioned there are similarities, I'm excited to see, and part of this is it's a new age in college football as well, where that might be something you need, right? To be a player's coach, you may need to be able to relate with those players a little bit. So to finally be able to get to see that side of Morgan Scalley that was kind of under wraps because he was working under Kyle Whittingham for so long, it's fun. It's cool. Very much a more like outgoing guy, which is, again, not a shot at Kyle. He just operates in one way and one way only. And, it's cool to see that dynamic in that parallel, but also how much they really do contrast each other. I think on the field, a lot of the product will be similar, but when you're talking about recruiting, you're talking about keeping guys in your locker room, you wonder, how much that's going to benefit Morgan Scalley, that he is a little more relatable in a lot of those fronts.
I hesitate to bring this up, but I'm going to, because life is short and why not? You've seen Morgan Scalley dance.
Yeah. Just, loud music at the facility, having a good time.
So there is a video that exists. I don't know who has it. I don't know what format, because this was probably 1999 or thereabouts. So Morgan Scalley, proud fraternity brother, your boy in here, because we know Sigma Chi's run the city. They run Salt Lake. Shout out. We used to do this thing called Songfest, and it wasn't really my jam. A lot of very enthusiastic a cappella frat members getting up and singing song. Good for you. But Morgan and I agreed one year to be part of a group of, I think, 6 fraternity members where we lip-synced and we danced to a Backstreet Boys song.
Yeah, we're going to need that.
It is out there somewhere. I can't remember. My buddy Alex Buxton, who used to wear 2 polos with his collars popped. Phenomenal dancer, by the way. Morgan and I weren't awesome dancers. We just, you know what it was? We were the eye candy. I'll just say it out loud. Okay. We brought the appeal.
Okay.
But the other members were phenomenal dancers. But there's a video that exists of myself, Morgan Scalley, lip syncing and dancing to a Backstreet Boys circa 1999.
I'm not requiring it to go public, but I do need to see it.
I don't know. I don't even know who to contact to get that. If any of my old fraternity brothers are listening, my phone number has not changed since 1996. So if anybody has access to that, Morgan may not appreciate that at this point because nobody gives a rip about me. This is the Utah football coach singing and dancing to a Backstreet Boys song when he was probably 18 years old.
I love it. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of that insight into a different dynamic you're going to get up on the Hill. Now, I want to be clear. It doesn't mean that Morgan is not like a serious, calculated guy. He very much is. I think he just leaves room for a little more fun in that regard than Kyle.
My call to the masses has been responded to by my buddy Adam Barker, who is actually being rude to me via text, and he's saying that we were dancing to a Spice Girls song.
Okay.
Was it? I thought it was Backstreet Boys. I don't know. That was like 30 years ago. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Shout out, Adam. Stop bullying me via text, please. If anybody else has access to this footage, go ahead and text me. Like I said, my phone number hasn't changed since 1996. All right. Yeah, we'll probably bring that Morgan interview back around in the 5 o'clock hour, Sean, because it was really good today. But Kyle Bonagura will be our first guest today, right out of the gates. But before Kyle stops by, courtesy of our good friends and your good friends at Prize Picks, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 with Prize Picks.
As Adam continues to braid me over text, you're the one that loved Songfest, you dork, you a cappella singing nerd. Stop texting me. Anyway, let's go over to Prize Picks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. Find your community on Prize Picks. With the new social feeds feature, you can share Prize Picks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tailor-fade our picks with just one click. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, so we discussed this yesterday. Schedule release day in the world of the Big 12. Schedule release day in the world of college football, as far as the local stuff with Utah and BYU. And then Texas Tech, of course, who has earned the right to be put on the first tier all by themselves as a result of what they did a year ago. But I want to intertwine this today with something that's topical in the world of college football. So tomorrow is the deadline. And look, how many of these college football deadlines are so arbitrary that it may not even matter? But tomorrow is thought to be the deadline for when the decision makers and power brokers in college football, which, by the way, according to this document that actually has signatures on it, Herbie Hancock's, if you will, little inside for the Gen Xers, this is all up to the Big Ten and the SEC. We shouldn't be surprised, but now they're not even trying to fake it. They're not even trying to pretend like, no, Big 12, we like you. ACC, come on in. Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame's in a different stratosphere because they're Notre Dame. But tomorrow is the deadline for these folks that don't seem to be able to get anything right, the leadership in the world of college football, to decide whether or not we will have an expanded college football playoff as early as next season. Now, my guess is we will not. I think this year, this upcoming season in college football, it will continue to just be 12 teams. And then maybe later on, after we move out of the space and, these people actually sit down and try to do what's best for the sport, maybe we'll get an expansion to 16 in a couple of years. There's still a Hail Mary's chance that we'll get an expansion to 16 this year, but I very much doubt it. It's topical around here for a couple of different reasons, namely this. When you look at what Texas Tech has in front of them this year, we talked about the BYU and Utah takeaways yesterday, but Texas Tech, when it comes to their schedule, you can more or less just basically chalk them into the Big 12 championship game. So there's no Utah, there's no BYU, and honestly, outside of Tech, Utah, BYU, and maybe Houston and TCU, there are not very good football teams in the Big 12. So no Utah or BYU for Tech. They missed Kansas and UCF, back-to-back games against Oklahoma State and Baylor. But ultimately, they just don't necessarily have a very challenging path to the Big 12 championship at all. So we'll get to the BYU and Utah stuff, but here's your tech schedule, okay? Abilene Christian is their first game. That will be 7,000-0. Oregon State, maybe once upon a time, a formidable challenge, not so much anymore, and a lot of that is out of their control. I mentioned Houston. Tech gets them at home. Their last non-conference game, the scheduling stuff in this sport continues to be such a joke. Sam Houston, which is also at home. They're on the road at Colorado. They'll smoke them. Then they get a bye. Arizona State, they get at home. Okay, so the good teams, and I'm using air quotes, the good teams on the schedule for Texas Tech are Houston, Arizona State, I'll throw Arizona in there, and TCU. Okay, those are probably their four toughest tests. Guess what? They are all in Lubbock. They are all at home. Their road games are Oregon State, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Like, they're not going to lose a game. They're going to float into the Big 12 championship game clean, okay? So the reason why expansion is topical around here is that whether you're Utah or BYU or, quite frankly, any other team in the Big 12, if this thing doesn't expand to 16, it's going to be Tech's party again, and only Tech's party again. We talked about BYU's their they get Utah Tech at home. They're going to be at Colorado State. Of course, that Notre Dame game is by far the biggest challenge on paper. November 7th up here in Salt Lake against Utah for the rivalry game. That feels like it could be a virtual play-in game for the Big 12 championship game. And then Utah, as we talked about. I mean, Utah and BYU fans should feel really good about this upcoming season and the chances to win double-digit games. And BYU has done that 2 straight years. It was an excellent bounce back for Utah to get to 11, including the bowl win this past year. But at Iowa State, as we talked about, at times could be a tricky task. They're completely rebuilding a program after Matt Campbell took his coaches and 19 players with him to Penn State. Probably at TCU and at Arizona after the BYU game. So the season for Utah really gets real starting in November. Of course, you have to handle your business before then. They do get Houston at home. They get Kansas at home, which is a benefit. BYU at home is a benefit. Avoiding Tech and Arizona State altogether is a benefit. But so many schools in the Big 12 Conference are replacing a tenured starting quarterback. Arizona is not. Noah Fafita is back. We'll see what TCU did. They got the Kentucky transfer QB to take over for their quarterback, who's now going to be playing for Indiana. West Virginia, your road game to finish things off. And then hopefully December the 4th, Big 12 championship game. And obviously we'd love for Utah to be there from an in-state standpoint, BYU to advance there, if it's not Utah. But if it doesn't expand to 12, there's a good chance that this is a one-bid league again. And coupled with the news that this debate and conversation about expanding the CFP situation is really up to the Big Ten and the SEC. Like, I don't know, man. This is why I continue to talk about the potential at some point of hopefully both Utah and BYU being able to gain access into the room where the decisions are actually made. And that room is occupied by 2 conferences right now. This is a P2 sport. Let's be very, very clear. If you're not in the SEC and you're not in the Big Ten, in large part, you are still a part of the group that is on the wrong side of that line of delineation. We'll catch a break. Good day to have Kyle Bonagura. Good day to have Kyle Bonagura on. He's going to be our first guest. Andy Larson, Amy Donaldson. We'll let you hear from Morgan Scally, who joined Sean's show in the 5 o'clock hour. Then we'll say goodnight at 6 o'clock right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Feels apropos to welcome in Kyle Bonagura today, a few weeks after the legendary Bob Weir passed away, to a little Grateful Dead song, because we know Kyle's a big fan of the Dead. Happy Thursday, Kyle. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Spence. Appreciate you mentioning that. A fun fact here. The last song that the Dead and Company played was Touch of Grey, the song that leads me in here on your show. I went to the show, the Saturday night show the day before, so I didn't see Touch of Grey one final time. But obviously, a sad time for people who appreciate the music, follow the band. I was kind of born into it, but more and more of a fan as I've gotten older. So yeah, sad time, but also, I think a moment where people can really appreciate the music. I've been jamming out to it for the last week and a half or so. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have a really good friend whose older brother he was one of those where it's like, okay, you might be too into the Dead. Like you don't need to see 30 concerts every summer, but thank you for like bringing the music to our friend group. And I had tickets to see the Grateful Dead in their entire full form. The summer Jerry Garcia died, they were going to play at MSG. So I never saw the Dead with Jerry Garcia, but I did see Dead and Company a few times. And did you ever have a chance to see them live when Jerry Garcia was alive?
I didn't. I didn't. So he died in '95.
Yeah.
I would have been 11 then. So probably like a couple more years. I might have been tagged along with my dad, but saw Dead and Company. I don't know, 6-7 times over the last 20 years or so. Saw him at the Sphere, which was really cool. Saw him, like I said, outside, or it was at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. Fare Thee Well tour. Down in Santa Clara, saw them a couple others. So certainly has been a kind of a soundtrack of my life growing up as some of the Deadhead.
Very nice. All right, Kyle. So I don't even know what deadlines mean in college football anymore, but tomorrow is the deadline, I guess, for the decision as to whether or not we're going to see an expanded CFP. And as I've listened to a lot of the coverage and read a lot of the coverage today and this morning, getting ready for the show, I'm not going to say surprised, but a little bit taken back about how front-facing the messaging is now, where, like, this is entirely up to the Big Ten and the SEC. Like, this is, it is a P2 sport. And if we have any questions about exactly whether or not that's true, I think it's being answered during this process where everybody, including all the other conferences, are just kind of waiting to see if the Big Ten and the SEC can agree upon this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting too, like they're split on this because, I think it's inevitable that the thing continues to grow, and the SEC pushing back against that. I'm not really sure I understand the logic there, like fighting off the inevitable. They certainly believe that they'll have a bigger, they'll have more teams consistently in that 16 team range, right? Probably, over time they'll have a higher percentage than the Big Ten would be my guess, and so maybe they're trying to hang on to that lion's share of the representation relative to the whole field. But certainly, obviously something that's going to have a huge impact on what the sport looks like. I think we've seen it as the playoff expands, from 2 to 4 to 12. The other bowl games feel less and less important, that on top of the calendar. I think, once you get to 24, I don't think you can really go much bigger to that, or you'd struggle to find support for anything any larger than that. Maybe a breakaway group of 6, I guess we can call it now, with the Pac-12 coming back to life next year. Maybe there's a kind of a breakaway playoff that can exist as well. But yeah, certainly fascinating to see how this is going to shake out. Do
you anticipate anything different now, like in the immediate future, or does it feel like we're just going to have another year where it's 12, or do you think they could make a change as quickly as this season?
I guess it's theoretically possible to open it up to 6. 16 feels like it'd be easier to implement for next year. I think it'll stay at 12 for this year. Is kind of reading the tea leaves and kind of just talking to people who have a better idea of it than I do. So my expectation would be that it stays at 12 and then eventually probably gets to 24 at some point. And whether it has to go to 16 for a period of time to kind of appease the SEC and some sort of a political move, could totally see that happening as well.
So you referenced the chance, like eventually for this thing to get to 24. Do you feel like when the dust settles, that's going to be the deal that we see a 24 team CFP format?
I think so, and I think it's. I raise this all the time. Like the FCS playoff has been unchanged for a long time, and it's been at 24 for a long time. It's unchanged because it just works.
Yep.
Right. It makes a lot of sense the way it's set up. I mean, they have the 8 bye game, the eight teams get byes, which I think is good because what it does is it avoids like those teams, those top 8 teams playing teams that are down in the late teens, and it kind of avoids those sort of matchups. So it allows the teams, in the 24 to I guess 9 range to play some meaningful football before they enter the real favorites. And I think what that does is it effectively replaces bowl games, right? Because like you still want to have, everyone wants more football, and this allows the sport to, kind of create meaningful football in place of those bowl games. Like I think you won't see opt-outs as much. I'm sure some people might find a way to justify leaving a playoff game at some point, the way things have kind of been evolving over the years. But I think like if you have 24 versus 9 or whatever the seedings look like, right? You'll have a lot of games that feel like they matter. They'll be on campus. They'll drive revenue. They'll drive ratings. There'll be meaningful games, and so I think that's where it ends up, and I think it's a pretty good format. The problem is the sport is just there's just so many teams, right? So to find a perfect playoff structure is hard to do, but FCS has right about the same amount of teams, and it's worked really well for a long time.
I'm going to ask you a simple question, which may not have a simple answer, but you and I have discussed this for years, and I've also talked about it just kind of separate from our conversation. What's the deal as far as why we can't just adopt that format? Is it like embarrassment because they think it's lower level football? I've not heard anybody argue the contrary. It feels like that's the perfect format, and I don't understand why we can't just land on it.
It's a mystery that baffles me because it feels like such a no-brainer, especially when you see like the way the bowl games have been devalued. But I think one of the problems with college sports in general is like there's so much resistance to change and to maintain traditions, which I think is novel on its face, right? Like a lot of that makes sense. Preserving traditions is most of the time a good thing, right? But in this case, I think that attitude works against landing on a place that makes a lot of sense. Like you would never, like if you were to like start from scratch, any sport in the world, you're going to start a competitive league of whatever sport and be like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play regular season. And then at the end of the year, we're going to play a bunch of exhibition games instead of playoffs. Like it just makes no sense. It's so ridiculous. But like that's just but in college football, because it's existed for so long, there's people like it, right? And they're hesitant to go away from something that has it's mostly a beloved time of the year, like bowl season, right? I think it's generally people like it, right? And I think it's really that simple. But it's hard to go away from those things. And I think it's really that simple. Like, look, having the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day and kicking off at a certain time, all those things are like we've tried to maintain those for as long as possible. But at a certain point, you have to give up on some of that stuff. We've seen it with rivalries, right? We've seen some of the biggest and most important rivalries in the sport go away in recent years. And look, I think that's just the reality of it. As things evolve, you have to be willing to part with things that we appreciate. And I think that's the case for bowls. And, on top of that, I think there's a, belief of teams at the top of the sport that they want to kind of stack the deck and make it as easy for them to kind of keep control of things at the top as much as possible. I mean, over the 14 playoff era, it was such a few amount of teams that were like regularly involved. And I think that had a really negative impact on like the nationality of the sport. It became much more regional during that period of time. And so, maybe there's some of that as well as trying to gatekeep those like the top tier of the sport by the powers that be.
Yeah, and if we're honest, we've talked about this over the past couple of shows because yesterday the Big 12 released their schedule, so we know the schedule for Utah and BYU, Texas Tech. Texas Tech, like just chalk them in, dude. Like their schedule is ridiculous. They avoid BYU and Utah. The four, I'll say, good teams are playing are all at home, and I'm just including Houston, Arizona State, Arizona, and TCU. And look, who knows how good they're even going to be. I'm just looking at some of the projections you guys have for like the top 25 and power rankings in the Big 12. I would be stunned if they lose a game. Now, on the other side, Utah avoids Tech and Arizona State. BYU avoids Tech. Both BYU and Utah have very manageable schedules, and I think Tech has a cakewalk schedule. But the reality, Kyle, is over the past couple of years, if we're going to be honest, the committee has basically told us pretty early on that you are a one-bid league. If you want to come to our party, you have to win your conference championship. So if they don't expand to 16, it just feels like the most likely scenario, and this is a sport that features a lot of chaos and is hard to predict. I completely understand that. That this will be another year where, based off of their schedule and the fact that they have another transfer portal class that is not just highly ranked in the Big 12, but highly ranked in the country, it feels like it's going to be Tech's conference to win again. And even if BYU and Utah show up to the Big 12 championship game, and obviously BYU's got to deal with Notre Dame, and lose the conference championship game, I have a hard time believing that's going to be enough to get in. Does it feel like if they don't expand, this will be another year where the powers that be in the Big Ten and the SEC will take the majority of the spots? And then, of course, there's Notre Dame and the ACC. Miami was really good this year. And the Big 12's most likely path is another year where there's one team invited to the party.
Yeah, no, I think that's the most likely scenario. I'm always a little bit hesitant to say, like, to write off things like that from the very beginning, because, like, there's so many different variables that aren't accounted for in that case, right? Like, there's just, like, if one or two more, like if Notre Dame had lost one more game and Oklahoma had lost to Alabama, like BYU would have been in, right? So like the margins were really tight, but they weren't, right? They lost two games, both of them to Texas Tech, 11-2 left out, and there really wasn't a whole lot made of them getting, snubbed, right? There wasn't this outcry like there was Notre Dame when in fact, you could have made the case that BYU is actually more deserving than Notre Dame based on results and all of that. So yeah, given that BYU just went 11-2 and they only lost to one team, like that feels like it's pretty instructive about what to expect in the future, right? And if anything else, it just talks about what the margin for error is. Like there's really no margin for error. Now, getting a win against Notre Dame, maybe that changes things, and you have a big out of conference win. Maybe that is the difference between getting in and not. But yeah, it's certain the Big 12 is not going to get any. You're not going to get the benefit of that against a team from the Big 10 or SEC when things are close.
Since you and I last spoke, Kirk Cignetti completed this incredible 2-year turnaround, and the Indiana Hoosiers are your national champion in college football. It's a wild sentence to say out loud based off of how that program has struggled for so many years, losing more games literally than any college football program. And for a long time, a basketball school for sure. What are your biggest takeaways? And attendant to the question, as I've tried to kind of make it topically locally, what sort of lessons can be learned from how Kirk Cignetti and his staff went about their business?
Yeah, I think what it does, and this is, I think, a really good thing for the sport in general. Like we've come to expect as like college football fans, like there's only a handful of teams that have a legitimate shot to win a national title, right? We all know the list. You can put it together, and like clockwork, it's been true for many decades. Indiana obviously was not on that list. Like the losingest program in college history, in football history, something like that, right? Obviously, they've been terrible for a very long time, and so if they're able to turn things around and win, like it gives every program a hope, right? Like there are few programs that can't say we have a better history than Indiana, right? Like that's just the reality of it. And so if you get the right coach, you get the backing, the financial backing, you can turn things around in this era of college football. This would not have been possible without the transfer rules, right? And players not being forced to sit out, because what happened was, and this is common now, like when he moved from James Madison, he brought a core group of guys that were influential in helping flip the thing, setting the culture, like good players, like a lot of reasons, right, where it's beneficial to have that. And the ability to inject a bunch of talent, like season to season, really makes it so like we need to look at college football in cycles, right? Where I went, Washington State was a good example of this, where look, they weren't going to be a perennial power, but you could develop a core play some guys young, get some experience, and build to something over a few years, and then every 4 or 5 years, like Washington State would have a really good team, right? Win 10 games or 9 games or whatever, and be competitive in the Pac-10, Pac-12. But now with the transfer rules the way they are, like all of that is out the window. It's very much you reset every year and start over. And if you can catch lightning in a bottle in 1 year or 2 years, it makes it a lot easier for a team to improve quickly. And so, I remember, I can remember different eras for a lot of different programs, right, where a team goes 1-10, and your fan base can kind of check out for the next couple of years, right? Because it would take time to be able to flip things and be able to be competitive. And obviously that's we saw, I guess, a little bit with Utah, right, where they had the down stretch the last couple of years before turning it around really quickly, but because they were bringing a coordinator and a quarterback, right, who were able to kind of help turn the lights back on that side of the ball overnight. And so I think that's the dynamic that makes this possible. And then I guess more simply, like Curt Cignetti is just an unbelievable coach, right? The job he did at Indiana this year, probably the best coaching job in the history of college football, given everything that we've talked about, right? It's just incredible that here we are, January 22nd, talking about an Indiana Hoosiers team that went 16-0 and is the college football national champion. It's just it would have been hard to believe this was possible even 2-3 years ago.
Tremendously impressed, and I will admit to being the brand bias guy a little bit, where I'm like, Indiana can't be good. Stop this, don't just stop it. They can't be good. And then you lock in on them, and you're like, they're not just good. They're disciplined. They're clean, mistake free. They're complete. They're well coached. And the Mendoza kid, Kyle, I'll tell you what, his second career start was against Utah in Salt Lake, and that was a good Utah team, and he was a young player, and he got his head kicked in. And I'm sure you watched him play over the years when he was out here in the footprint. No part of me saw this coming. I mean, as impressed as I've been with Curt Cignetti, I'm incredibly impressed with the growth of this young man.
It's wild. I mean, we talked about, 2023, the last year of the Pac-12, we wrote about this a couple times that year, like my colleagues and I at ESPN.com, about how the Pac-12 quarterback class that year might have been the best of all time. And we're talking about, Caleb Williams was obviously the headliner. Cam Ward was there. Like Shedeur Sanders was there. Bo Nix was there. Michael Penix was there. Like there was a lot of guys who went on. Like all of those guys, I think, have started games in the NFL now, or are permanent starters in the NFL now. Dante Moore was a freshman at UCLA that year. He was very good. There's Cam Rising was at Utah and expected to be a really good player at that stage, right, where there's still a lot expected from him. Just really good quarterback play. The stats kind of backed it up. This assertion that it was the most productive quarterback group of all time. It was incredible, the numbers. I have to go back and check for specifics. But one player that we never mentioned that year was Fernando Mendoza, who was the starter at Cal.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that kind of illustrates the point, right? Like we talked about how great this was, and he just was kind of an anonymous nobody at Cal, right? They didn't have a great offense. He was fine. There was nothing about what I saw from him during his time at Berkeley that made me think, hey, what happened this year was possible. I mean, even this year, I watched the first game of the year for Cal, and when JKS, their freshman quarterback, put on a show, and immediately, I thought to myself, hey, this guy is actually a pretty significant upgrade over Fernando Mendoza. I had that thought this year. Obviously, that looks ridiculous now, but that just kind of speaks to kind of the player Fernando was at Cal. Good, not great. So to take this jump speaks to his own individual growth, but the job that staff did in putting him into a spot to be successful is incredible.
So moving over to the latest issue of several issues, but this is pretty, this is something that I find a little bit disturbing, and I don't know what can be done about it. According to the numbers I have, in the 2024-25 portal cycle, nearly 98% of the scholarship players at P4 programs who transferred ended up matriculating to a new school. That will not be the case this year. As of today, there were over 10,500 players who entered the portal. And as of today, there are more than 1,200 unsigned. and there are not near enough scholarship spots at P4 schools for all of these players. We have had a couple of guests to talk about this, and Yogi Roth, who's now with the Big Ten Network, said he was talking to a coach, and he dropped the line. He said, the coach told me that what a lot of these players don't realize is they think they're transferring and they're actually retiring, which at the age of 18, 19, 20 is not good. So I don't know, man, just your thoughts on a trend that if it's not curtailed could continue.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, you kind of got to put the onus on the players, right? You either have to know that you're going to get picked up, right? And this will probably be instructive, like these numbers, right? That maybe players will be more hesitant to leave. But they only have them, like the guys who enter the portal. I mean, and some of them were kind of ushered into the portal, right? Because they're not good enough. Or they're at the program where the staff didn't want them anymore. Which that's just part of competitive sports, I guess. But yeah, I do wonder how much ebb and flow there will be with that issue, right? If we see what's happened this year, and then maybe less guys on the fringes enter the portal next year, because you're also, those Power 4 scholarship spots, and even FBS at large, right? Like, it's not just freshmen that they're going after, but like now you're going into like proven guys at the D2 and FCS level, right? Like if you're an all-conference FCS player, like you're probably going to get paid at an FBS school the next year. Like all those guys will find a home if you're an all-conference level guy. And so if you kind of pair the high school signings with all those guys who are going to raise up a level, right, it's a math problem. I mean, like you said, there's just not that many spots for all those guys. So whether, how the trend evolves and is to be seen, we can kind of make some assumptions, but I think this is just the new reality of it. The players fought for having this freedom, which I think is like deserved. Like you should be able to transfer without sitting out, but there's it's not all good for all these guys. It doesn't work out for everyone.
Kyle, appreciate the time, man. Thanks for joining us. Of course, the season is over, but college football topically is the gift that keeps on giving. You have a great weekend. We'll chat soon, okay?
All right. Cheers, guys.
Kyle Bonagura covers college football for ESPN, does a little soccer as well. ESPN 700 wants to send you to an advanced screening of Shelter, starring Jason Statham, happening Tuesday, January the 27th at Megaplex Valley Fair Mall. Text Shelter right now to 877-353-0700. That is Shelter to 877-353-0700 for your chance to win. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Andy Larson is our first guest on the other side of a quick break right here on ESPN 700. All right, our friend Amy Donaldson from KSL will join us today live in studio. We will bring back Sean O'Connell's interview with Morgan Scally in the 5 o'clock hour, 25 good minutes with the new Utah football coach. So stay tuned for that. But our first guest during the 3 o'clock hour, our friend from the Salt Lake Tribune, covers the Jazz and does some data columns and joins us on a consistent basis. He is the great Andy Larson. Hello, young man. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. Do we start with the, hey, we're not going to sign any players, but we might rename our soccer team storyline?
Sure, why not?
What are your thoughts?
What do you think? Where do we want to start?
Well, I'll just, I am obviously adamantly against it as somebody who was in those rooms when we literally decided to name the club Real Salt Lake. Now, a couple things here, Andy, then I want to let you go and hear you cook a little bit. The context that I think people forget is that initially this name was created because we wanted to be the domestic partner of Real Madrid. Okay, so it wasn't created just out of thin air. That was a partnership that was consummated. That was a partnership that was moving in the right direction, so much so they came over here to play us, which was probably among the coolest things I've ever been a part of in my entire life. Now, once the leadership change was made over there, our partnership with them was basically fractured. I mean, it was so much to the point where we were talking about creating a Real Madrid academy here. Now, the academy has been created, but not in conjunction with Real Madrid. Then, obviously, my father and his group sold the team to Deloitte, and the rest is history. So I think some people just fail to either understand or even know about the original context as to why the team was named what the team is named. But to your point on social media, this is a team that's won MLS Cup. We have a trophy. And after 22 years, to even consider changing the name Real Salt Lake seems wild to me. The Utah Jazz is probably the weirdest fit between state and name in all of professional sports. So that's where I'm at with it, but let me hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree, and I'll add a couple points there where I think what we've learned is that in Utah, you should lean into nostalgia. You should lean into the history that what it is that people know. I mean, I think that's where the Jazz failed on their rebrand, going to black and yellow. Those were not colors that anyone had any affinity for.
Yeah.
And so to change everything that your franchise is about because there's new ownership really turns off a lot of fans. And, I think that's important to note. And, yes, I think Real Salt Lake is a goofy name. It's the kind of thing that makes people laugh, just like the Utah Jazz. But I think, because at least here there is a reason behind it, like there is with the Jazz. It's tied to the franchise's beginnings. And I just think that, like, the Millers are so tied up in the wrong stuff right now, man. Like, I get it. The branding people are not the soccer people, and just because you ask in a survey doesn't mean you're going to change the name. But God, like, it just feels like, there's no movement on the on-field front. The way that they marketed have marketed the Inter Miami game at the expense of kind of everything happening within the club, it doesn't feel like the Millers understand how to run a soccer team. Like, they don't have any conception of what matters. And so that's, I'm waiting for that to change, and I'm waiting for investment to show, and I'm waiting for, the good ownership to come through, right? Like, we talked for decades about, wow, what good ownership the Millers are, and it's just like, okay, now we need to see it, and if we're going to bring a Major League Baseball team through the Miller organization, then we need to know that it's going to be well run. And right now, I'm pretty confident in Larry Miller's ability to run a franchise, and not that confident in their kids' ability to run a franchise.
Yeah, and look, we'll see. At this juncture, I'm approaching this with some skepticism because I have been told that there's the potential that a guest is going to join this show tomorrow to announce some signings, but I've been told that for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it just feels like this is the same thing we dealt with last year during both windows, both portals. It's like, all right, are these rumors going to come to fruition? Are you actually spending money on talent? I always bring up that 2009 team because it's close to my heart. It's a different league now. It's a different league with different owners with deeper pockets that spend tens of millions of dollars on talent. I know that we're never going to get Messi or Son or anybody like that here. But, we start this season in about 4 weeks. And on paper, this is not a team that can compete for anything special this year. That's just my opinion.
No, and if adding Lucas Ingles, which is an addition I like, or there's a rumor about a new midfielder that released today who played in League One. Like, those are good additions, but they're not, they don't use up the $7 million in GAM that you have that's second in Major League Soccer, and they don't reflect the fact that you bought the franchise for $600 million less than a year ago, and already MLS franchises are being sold for $700 million or even valued at $900 million. So like it's frustrating because it is a tremendous business opportunity for the Millers, and you understand why they got into it. But if they are, it's a couple windows now where I think the expenses have been, the purchases have been really kind of underwhelming. And by the way, the results were too last year. And nor are you seeing a new vision implemented at the club through new leadership. It's kind of familiar leadership. So, yeah, it's just tough. It's I don't know that they're giving any fans any reason to believe in the club. And, there's a whole song about whether or not RSL fans should believe, and I would really like to believe.
So last thing, then we'll move over to some Jazz stuff. If we want to be nice and give them the benefit of the doubt and say there will be a guest on this show tomorrow announcing signings, you referenced the rumors. What would it just feels like in the attack they're lacking. You referenced they had the center back to step in for Vera. And they move Ojeda, and you're right. They've got all of this GAM out there. TAM was such a silly league. What would you like to see happen prior to the start of the season?
You need 2 new designated players, and you need them to be good designated players. You need to spend at least $5 million on them each in order to compete in this league. Look, I mean, that's what we're talking. They have no designated players right now. They have open U22, and the attack is probably the worst in MLS. And I get frustrated about this because I want RSL to succeed, but there are other small market teams that are doing what RSL is not, like Colorado's being more ambitious. Austin's being more ambitious. San Jose just signed Timo Werner, like a Premier League striker. Like it's frustrating, man. Like I get that. Hey, they want to pretend they're a small market team, and they are, and I get it. But like, you have to try to compete in order to try to compete on the field. If you just are at the bottom of the MLS franchise ambition rankings, what do your fans have to root for here? It's tough. So yeah, look, I hope that tomorrow's signing goes well. Again, if it's kind of the rumor that came out today, I think that's a good addition. I am curious to see how the 3-4-3 kind of works out, but talent-wise, it doesn't stack up right now.
Let me ask you one more thing, actually, because you exist in a space that I just don't, namely online a lot. And unfortunately, I just took a new job that mandates I have to be online more than I would like to be. Nonetheless, what's the sentiment around RSL fans concerning the potential change of the name and change of the brand?
I mean, I tweeted about it yesterday, and I've seen only negative stuff. I mean, in the Facebook groups, on the message boards, and on Twitter, it's been largely negative. I will say on OC's poll yesterday, he did a Twitter poll. It was more 60-40 negative rather than 90-10 negative, like I've kind of seen from our fans.
Andy, we've run into a cell phone connection issue. I'm not sure if you moved around, but we're losing you a little bit. Let's see if we can get you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there it is.
Disconnected from my Wi-Fi. Okay, cool.
Yeah, got you back.
Thanks, man. So look, I think the hardcore fans are really against this move. OC did that poll yesterday that said, hey, would you support a name change? And it was kind of more neutral. It was more like 60% of the respondents said no and 40% said yes, or somewhere in there. But I'm still, definitely tilting towards negative. I don't think there's upside there.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I guess only time will tell. Because to your point, I mean, a survey being sent out for feedback doesn't mean anything is imminent. But I've made my stance clear. I'm proud of the lineage and the history, and I still very much love that team and want it to do well, and have a ton of friends over there. So I'll be pulling for them no matter what. All right, Andy.
If this becomes Utah United or something like that, like Utah FC, come on now, like. Or the Utah Bees, I don't know. Just I can't imagine a good name for this team, right?
Yeah, just the lineage and the history is there. It's been established. Just move forward with it. Safe to say that the Timberwolves win was as fun of a watch as we've seen all year from the team.
Yeah, that and like the San Antonio and Detroit wins. This team has actually been kind of fun and competitive. The Clippers win at the beginning of the year where, we thought the Clippers would be good, but hey, like there have been some really fun moments in the Delta Center, but I think this was a really impressive win given it was on the second night of a back-to-back. It was their first win without Lauri Markkanen. Keontae George is the real deal. Like he is playing at a level that very, very, very few 22-year-olds do in this league. And it's been fun, man. Like this is, it's a bummer because it almost kind of feels like that Donovan Mitchell rookie year team, except that they're holding back in order to be a bottom 8 team so they can keep their pick, right? Like if this team were healthy, I think they are like slightly below 500 and competing for a play-in tournament spot. But instead they're just, resting guys and Keontae's questionable tonight. I suspect he doesn't play and they're trying to stay in draft contention, which is, it's just kind of a weird situation.
So, and look, I want to be clear. You have to do that. I get it. You have to hold on to that asset, especially with how appealing some of these college players have turned out to be. But as far as, Austin Ainge responding to Sean's comment of we're not going to be manipulating minutes in the name of maintaining draft capital, was he just lying, or is that because they're clearly doing it, Andy?
Yeah. I mean, that was the intention at the time. And I think Keontae being good and Nurkic being a positive NBA center and Svi Mikhailiuk not being a replacement level guy, but like a 2 to 3 win starting level shooting guard. Okay, probably not starting level, but like replaceable and pretty decent, has meant that this is a 35 win team on paper rather than an 18 win team on paper, and so I think they had all the intentions of the world to just let it ride, and then it turned out, oh heck, we're probably too good for that. So they're adapting, and yes. Does that mean that Austin was lying? I suppose. Like it means that maybe that conviction was less strong than the conviction to get a top 3 pick this year.
Well, and look, just to be clear, all of these front office execs and coaches lie to the media and the public all the time. I always talk about this coming from my seat where I've been on both sides. I've been in front offices now in the media. I have been a part of processes of creating narratives and creating messages that we knew weren't entirely accurate. We were just trying to create the narrative and messaging we wanted people to hear about us, right? And so this is kind of the game. It's not like Austin stands alone as somebody who is not completely forthcoming when it comes to what exactly the plan is going to be, and not like he was going to tell us anyway, Yeah,
and look, again, even the internal conversations where we're going to play everyone this year, right? Like, Will Hardy, I remember talking to him during the summer, and I think it was August, like he was legitimately excited to go full bore this year to try to, coach these guys as hard as possible and have a full component of players every night. And that's really what he thought was going to happen. And instead, because they're too good, they have to do another year of tanking. And it sucks, and the NBA should really reconsider some of the structural stuff that leads up to this. But given the incentives here, like everyone's on board, right? Like it's not just Austin Ainge or Danny Ainge or Ryan Smith doing this, right? Like it is Will Hardy's on board because he knows it makes sense. And even someone like Lauri Markkanen, who is this has cost him 4 years of his career now in his prime as an all-star level player. He's on board. Like he's on board with them doing the right thing. So from a tanking, I guess, point of view, because he wants that next star player in this draft lottery to be his teammate. So if you have that kind of buy-in kind of up and down the totem pole, if you will, like it does just make sense to do it.
Yeah, and I wonder, you referenced the league, like they fined him a year ago for the market and stuff. I don't know what they could do at this point, because it's certainly the Jazz aren't alone here. Do you think we're going to see a situation where the Jazz could continue to get fined if they continue to be very, very blatant about these things that aren't real?
The thing is, their player participation policy only really affects Lowry.
Yeah.
So long as, if they can, and it does seem he was legitimately sick over the last week. So, like, if he has whatever ailment that is legitimate and they can keep him out, then fine. But, like, I anticipate them sitting Keontae, I anticipate them sitting Nurkic and Svi and Kevin Love and to kind of do what it takes in order to keep their pick this year. I think ultimately Lowry will kind of be in and out of the lineup, and maybe it's kind of like last year where we see a one fine, but I don't think we're going to see like them fined every week or something like that, because it is just about Lowry's participation under the CBA.
So what's the rest of the year going to look like? Andy, what are you anticipating?
Yeah, I mean, we got the trade deadline right coming up in a couple of weeks. I don't think it's going to be a loud one for the Jazz. I think they'll look at potentially moving some of the vets, but I don't think there's going to be a lot of interest there. I do think, and then, the remaining couple of months are about seeing which of the young guys you can maybe get to take a step forward, right? Like, can you get Cody Williams up to a 30% three-point shooter? He's doing a lot better in the last couple of weeks. Can you get Taylor Hendricks any kind of a foothold at like what he does at the NBA level to be successful? Can you steer Bryce Sensabaugh and turn him into like a real six man and see a positive player, that kind of thing? But and then we're going to see kind of what we've seen over the last probably 3 weeks, a month now, right? Like where they are going to sit a lot of guys in a lot of games in order to try to lose them, and especially in those games against lower-ranked opposition. In other words, their competition in the tank race.
I've asked you about Zanuck. Or was that McMahon? I can't remember. Did I ask you about Justin lately?
I don't think so.
So look, I'm honestly just curious because he's never around. You don't see him. Bowler said he was on the road. Do you know, has his role been altered since hiring Austin? Do you have any idea where Justin Zanuck fits in this puzzle these days?
Yeah, I would say I do see him relatively often. I would say I see him about the same as before. I would say, look, it's been extremely clear that Austin Ainge is the guy in charge, and they may take Justin's opinion into account, but I don't think that it's one of the louder voices in the room at this point. And, that's got to be tough for Jay-Z, right? Like, he was the general manager of this team, and Ryan and Danny passed him up in order to go for an assistant GM, a lower title from another team. And so, I think that probably says a lot about kind of where his voice stands. But he's still absolutely, affiliated with the organization. He's still in all those meetings. He's in the practice facility, at the games, traveling with the team on the road from time to time. Like, he's, I think, about as involved, kind of himself as he used to be. I'm just not sure that I buy, like, from a decision-making point that he is, as involved as he was before, for sure.
So have you seen enough? Because it's been interesting. I've talked about this, and I do think there have been some misguided decisions over this now 4-year rebuild project, and up until this year, it was difficult to kind of see this thing crystallize to the point where, okay, maybe the future does look bright. This year, I've started to kind of come around a little bit to see the moments. Like the Keontae stuff is just real. I mean, I give that kid so much credit for getting into the gym last offseason. We'll leave the defensive stuff aside for a moment because, look, there are very few players on this roster that either know how to play defense in the NBA or care to put the effort in. And there are starting to become ace moments where you're like, okay, there's something there. I don't need to see anything from Lowry. I know who he is. I don't know what the future holds with Walker, but I feel like I've seen enough from Walker to know that he could be a piece. are you starting to see this thing crystallize? That if finally Lady Luck shines on the Jazz this upcoming lottery and they get one of these two kids, I've kind of come to the space where I do believe it's either Darren or AJ. Due respect to Cam Boozer, I think it's going to be fine. I think the franchise changing pieces are the top two. If they can grab one of those top two picks, have you seen enough to believe if we are front-facing and serious about being a grown-up competitive basketball team next year, that we could start to see some exciting things?
I think if you get any of the top 3 or top 4, then yeah, and pretty much almost kind of no matter what, you go for it next year. I think if you get one of those top 3 or 4, then you are actually a playoff team next year. I kind of believe that, barring injury or what have you, kind of normal development from Ace, normal development from Keontae, normal development from Walker, Lowry kind of staying at the same spot, plus, a rookie who is probably in his first year, given how good these guys are, probably 3 to 5 win additional pieces. That's good enough to be a low seed in the playoffs, right? I think that's a playoff team. Now, if you get to the, let's say the 7th or 8th pick, you're not as confident there and you're fighting for a play-in spot. But the Jazz have a core 4 right now, and that's really, really promising. And, I think we'll see, and it's possible that Ace doesn't pan out the way we think he will, or Walker Kessler turns out to be problematic in the playoffs or whatever. But there's stuff here in a way that there was in 2017 or 2013 with the Jazz, when it was you're developing a core of young players and you're starting to see things pop in a way that, it's been a long time since we've seen that. And that's really, really exciting. I mean, I've talked to Will Hardy about this. He's really excited for the first time in a while. And I think the fans are too. I think the fans who have stayed tuned in to this, long rebuild have been finally rewarded this season with, some strong play from the youth, right? This is kind of what they hoped for, was having a quality rookie in this draft, some nice surrounding pieces, and one of those, 8 draft picks popped, and then it's Keontae George. And so all of a sudden things make a whole lot more sense. They're on their way up for sure.
All right, I'm just seeing the rumor about this midfielder for RSL. Do you know how to pronounce this kid's name? I'm not even going to try it.
No, that's why I opted out at the beginning of this interview.
His last name appears to be Spearings. That doesn't look too hard. Is that the same rumor you're hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, Andy. Thanks for the time, buddy. Be well. Let's chat soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ben.
Andy Larson covers the Utah Jazz for the Salt Lake Tribune, writes data columns as well. RSL superfan with an impassioned plea to ownership to bring some talent in, and maybe they are. I don't know. I'm not smashing tape on Dutch soccer in my free time, so I have no idea about this young man. I do believe, if I remember correctly, this team he's leaving is a David Blitzer-owned team, if I remember that right. He's a midfielder, handsome young man, good haircut, good smile, wears an Apple Watch. The extent of my knowledge. You want to break this guy's game down for me?
I don't have much for you, honestly.
Good in possession, good with the ball at his feet, silky smooth passer, sneaky finisher. You can just use cliches and superlatives.
Good with the ball at your feet. Mm-hmm. Usually a big part of soccer.
Kind of a mandate if you're going to play soccer. RSL had a preseason match today. Are we having our guest on tomorrow to potentially announce some exciting things?
We will have a guest.
All right.
I can't confirm or deny any content, but
Andy said the Utah Bees. Is that into consideration for the soccer team?
Isn't that the baseball team?
Is it still the Bees? Yeah, it is the Bees. You can't name the soccer club the Bees when your baseball team is the Bees, can you?
I don't think so.
It was the Buzz once upon a time when we were doing the hokey like everything needed 2 Z's.
The Eagles?
The Golden Eagles were our original hockey team back in the day. Do not change the name. Okay, focus on signing players and winning soccer matches. Amy Donaldson, our good friend from KSL, will be live in the studio coming up. But I do want to tell you about a new client, and I'm juiced that they're on the station because I work with them. And because I work with them, I can tell you about what could happen if you work with them too. So, new year, new you. Did you set a resolution to lose a little weight? Did you set a resolution to get back in shape? Did you set a resolution to lose a lot of weight? Well, how's it going now that there were 3 weeks into January? The good news is if you're frustrated about your lack of progress, I can tell you how to make twice the progress you've made in half the time, because that's what happened with me. It's Game Day Men's Health. A couple of years ago, I set a goal. I said, I want to get into the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. Okay. So cleaned up some habits, started eating better, went to the gym, yoga, was doing all the things I thought you needed to do to get in shape. And I was frustrated about the lack of progress because I am old. That's how it goes. Now, there are things that you can put in place. The kids call it biohacking to expedite your process. So I was at dinner with a friend. I was telling her that I was frustrated about this entire thing, and Game Day Men's Health came up to supplement testosterone, which I had never done before. So I went into Game Day Men's Health. They gave me a free consultation. They're offering you the same. What does that look like? Well, a little bit of blood work is all. Then they sit down with you and go over your levels and say, okay, you're good here, you're deficient here. And, they'll talk about options. If you want to lose a lot of weight, they have the most affordable semaglutide and tirzepatide products. And I'll tell you why it's the most affordable in a minute. But for me, I utilized their testosterone therapy, and then I got on some peptides. And within a couple of months, I made more progress by far than I had in the months prior. And the best news is 2 years later, I've kept the weight off, and I'm in the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. You can too. So schedule your free consultation, but here's the kicker, okay? Locations in Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, that's the one I go to in South Ogden. If you tell them you heard me talking about it, the offer they have for you right now is 50% off the entire year. Here's why that's good news. If you listen to the show, first of all, thank you. Hello, how are you? Second of all, you've heard me talking about this before, but if you waited, good for you. You played the game right, because it is January. Breaking news. January, as I understand it, is the first month of the year, as I understand it. What that means is if you call and get the consultation done, you get 50% off of 12 months with Game Day Men's Health, as opposed to the rest of the year in October, right? So you'll save a grip of money. It is super affordable. It's the very same deal they gave me. Game Day Men's Health. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, get your consultation in, and tell them you heard me talking about it. They're giving you 50% off your entire year of membership. It's our good friends at Game Day Men's Health. Amy Donaldson, live in studio, coming up on ESPN 700. If you missed Morgan Scally with our buddy Sean O'Connell today, stay tuned. We're going to replay that at 5:30. It was awesome. Sean did a great job, and of course, he and Morgan were teammates back in the day. As Morgan has officially taken over, the Morgan Scally era is here. Live in studio, our good friend Amy Donaldson from KSL. Hello, Amy. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's great to see you, as always. Let's start with, so the Miller Entertainment Group sent out an email. They're asking for feedback from the community concerning their new shiny toy, which is Real Salt Lake, the Utah Royals, the Monarchs, the entire soccer, as Trey would say, the compendium of soccer assets that exist in Salt Lake. Among the pieces of feedback they're looking for is whether or not folks would like them to change the name Real Salt Lake and kind of change the branding of the team. I have made my opinion very clear on this. Where do you stand on it?
I mean, I don't even have to have heard your opinion to know what it would be.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's problematic. There's a reason they didn't change the Jazz name when it came to Utah.
Right.
Right. Like, there's a history that's associated with the name. That whole origin story. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts of making the podcast, Making of a Moment, was how did soccer end up in Utah? Why did they choose this name? Sort of what went into, what was the, and even if you don't agree with it, like even if it was like a very misguided or misdirected choice, it is like still part of the DNA of the team.
Yeah.
And so I think that rebranding something's always risky, ask Cracker Barrel. But also, I think that it's also it's sort of like when they come in and do a bunch of layoffs of all the people they think are old or out of touch.
Yeah.
And that there goes your institutional memory. If you cut yourself off from your roots, what are you?
Right.
You're just you say shiny toy, you're just another shiny. There's a lot of shiny toys. Why not lean into your history and your origin stories? There's so many really interesting moments, especially when something's starting from scratch. It's one thing to move a franchise. It is a completely different thing to do what your dad and his team did in building Real Salt Lake. So, and really that entire soccer ecosystem, which is, let's be honest, what makes it uniquely valuable. And so I think tread lightly here is my advice.
Yeah, and look, to be clear and to be fair, I always try to be fair. Hopefully I am. A survey does not indicate intent. A survey does not indicate that this is on the verge of happening. So I'm not saying that it is, but Trey sent it over. I told him I'd mention it. And so, of course, in order to talk about it, I wanted to go through it. And that stood out. I was like, wait, hold on a second.
Yeah, I mean, your last guest, Andy Larson, also tweeted about it and said, wait, what's happening? I think I ascribe to this idea. There's no bad question, right? Ask the question, understand how people feel. You don't make assumptions. So I think that I looked over the survey, and it's ranges from all kinds of stuff. And I think that it could be very innocuous. I think we're reading a lot into it because there's a little, I think there's a lot, not a little, there's a lot of anxiety around the soccer products right now.
Right. Yeah. No, and it does feel like, and I'm sure part of the motivation, because look, Steve Stark's a smart guy. The Millers, this is a very successful group of people that for the most part have made very smart, savvy decisions. And we have a World Cup in our region starting in a matter of weeks. The last time a World Cup was played here was 94. It literally was a conduit to the start of Major League Soccer.
Yep.
So I don't know what this moment is going to provide as far as a boost for the game domestically, but it does feel like anybody who is invested into this product right now is expecting some sort of upward trajectory as a result of the biggest sporting event in the world. By the way, by far, there's nothing that's even close to it.
100%. And I think that, look at what the 1999 Women's World Cup did just for women's soccer. In women's sports, that's the kind of exposure you would kill somebody for.
Randy Chastain.
Yeah. They're but so many great games. Like there were just, if you watch, people were so invested. And over, that's one of the reasons we love the Olympics, which is coming up. One of the reasons this state is the number one Olympic market. We love these sort of universal themed, worldwide sporting events.
Yeah.
And that's what the World Cup is. And I am expecting that as well. I am also have been pretty disappointed sometimes by the buy-in. And I think what fans are kind of feeling some anxiety about is you see Ryan Smith at all the basketball games and some of the hockey games, and you see like they're getting a ton of love from the media. The Mammoth, I watched a game last night on my television. I don't know the last time I did a soccer game that way. And so I think there's that aspect. And then, the Millers are super into the Major League Baseball and, the new minor league stadium out there. There's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, sweat equity is in those things. And you see it, and the media is covering it, so it feels important. I always say, whatever you pay attention to tells people what you value. And when you can't get attention, you're not on the radar. You're not valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that fans of RSL and fans of the Monarchs and fans of the Royals are just feeling a little bit neglected.
Yeah, and I mean, I can only speak for myself. I obviously try to cover every product that we have in the market, right? And, ultimately, if you're in this ecosystem, you are beholden in some way, shape, or form to attention and engagement. And I have a dashboard. I can see what my interviews do. And my RSL interviews are actually highly downloaded because I've been doing it for a long time. And I think people know that they can come here for the right information because of my relationships. But it just leads to the question, how widespread is the interest? And I honestly don't know the answer. I mean, I know that their ticket sales numbers are good. The Messi game is going to help, and they're doing with the Messi game what everybody does with the Messi game, which is, you're also going to see the Columbus Crew, and you're going to see, FC Dallas. All right, we're selling it, but that's the name of the game. The Messi game is going to provide a windfall of probably $4 to $5 million, which is a big deal in a league where owners are still losing money. But as far as the interest across the landscape of the community, do you think there's still growth, or is the niche audience just the niche audience?
No, I think there's still growth. Look, I think if you would have just polled media people, nobody would have anticipated how popular Major League Hockey was going to be, right? Like everybody was like, we can't support minor league hockey. How are we going to support the NHL, right? I've been to a couple games. My daughter, who is not a sports fan of any kind, is obsessed with the Mammoth. She's like educating herself on what are the rules of hockey. Like, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And those tickets are expensive, and they do the stadium is mostly full. And you see people standing in lines for merchandise and stuff like that. But they have all these like little events around them. I thought it was really smart that both the Jazz had this really nice crossover like for Christmas. I got a nephew who's like crazy about the Jazz. I got a kid who's crazy about the Mammoth. I get a little joint package, and I get tickets to both things, and I get a sweatshirt, and they did some really smart things there.
Mm-hmm.
They did the gift thing and pick 3 games. They had a similar thing, but it was very much like an amount of money. It wasn't as interesting, and it didn't cross over. And I thought that's where the crossover is where you get. But soccer is the most popular sport among youth. And in Utah, it's ridiculous. It's the world's game. There's nowhere to go but up. And I have argued this as a woman, and a woman who covered women's sports. It's a chicken and an egg. People don't know what they don't know. I have people that I've sent to like the Love Volleyball League that started here. Bought tickets for people, sent them whatever. They see college volleyball, they see beach volleyball at the Olympics, or they see BYU men's volleyball. Like, people actually see a game either on TV and in person. It's even more energetic. And they are like, how did I not know about this? This is fantastic. Everybody I've taken to soccer. My dad was like super slow on the soccer uptake, right? If I hadn't been doing a podcast, I probably couldn't have dragged him into it. He's all in now. I think, and my dad's 78.
Yeah.
You met my dad.
Yeah.
He's a baseball guy. Like, that's his thing. And he loves football. But I'm just saying, there's growth. It's chicken and egg. You have to tell stories. You have to interest people. You have to connect them emotionally. And you just have to work your butt off being really creative. And I've said this forever. You might have the money and you might have the product. But if you do not have the media, you don't have what you need.
Yeah, and it's fair, and I can't speak to maybe, and I talked to Trey about this quite a bit. The frustration of RSL being covered oftentimes mainly by fans who have a blog, and wondering why you can't get the TV stations out there and such. But I referenced this list, I don't know, a few months back. I think it was when we were discussing.
Yeah, I remember this.
So the most popular sports by number of fans in the world. Okay. Mm-hmm. So soccer is number 1. 3.5 billion people cite soccer as their favorite sport in the world. Cricket is 2.5 billion. Basketball is 3 with 2.2 billion. I talk about this all the time for the frustration of a lot of people, including me, about the regular season NBA product, and they need to do this, that, or whatever. Like, no, they don't, because they have so many revenue streams generated from their interest across the world. Hockey is 2 billion. Tennis is 5 at 1 billion. American football is 10th with 400 million. Now, of course, that's the majority of the footprint here because football is king in America. But oftentimes we have these blinders on. It's not just that soccer is the world's game. It's the world's game, and it's really not even close.
No, but also I thought you were actually talking about a different graph that I saw where the MLS actually, I think it
surpassed baseball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, which, sort of slightly was like, my dad was like, oh, man, the soccer's taking us over, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, there's room for everyone, right? Like, there's enough interest. People have enough leisure time. There's enough pie. Will it be finite at some point? Probably.
Yeah.
But right now, the biggest issue I see with the local, with RSL and the Monarchs and the Royals is simply finding some consistent storytelling in the local media, because media companies are struggling themselves. They don't have the staff, and you really have to get somebody. You got to get a Chris Camrani.
Yeah.
Who's a knowledgeable reporter, because he grew up a fan of the game. He understands the game. He understands the culture of the game, and then and the community aspect of it. So it's not just like I know the rules, right? That's one way of covering it.
Yeah.
But he's not a fan. He's still gonna do like this, what I like to call news/sports, where you're getting sports, but you're also like getting an understanding of the human condition, right? And that's what you need.
Yeah.
To grow, I think you have to get those kinds of storytellers interested in your product, and that's what you have to. And Trey, nobody does it better than Trey. The dude hustles like nobody's business.
Yeah.
I text him at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, and he texts me back.
Yeah.
And so I think he's doing everything he can, but that is the challenge that women's sports have faced.
Right.
And that is, look, we struggled until we got Caitlin Clark. You got to get your horse, right?
Yeah.
You got to get and then people who didn't want any, listen, I listened to talk radio. And there were people that I will never watch women's basketball. It's not real basketball. These, whatever, the ladies of basketball, whatever. They lower the hoop or whatever. So slow. It's such a boring game. They don't even get off the floor. All these things I endured for 20 plus years. Those people were singing a different song when Caitlin Clark started playing basketball.
The Caitlin Clark conversation continues to be so fascinating to me.
100%.
As far as the way people have, digested it. And then there was clearly a financial windfall that the league is actually still experiencing, where now these women are.
No, there's a struggle. Yeah.
Right. Now these women are no longer flying coach. They actually are traveling the way they should be traveling. And then there's this undercurrent of jealousy from the players that did legitimately build the WNBA and never really had the attention that Caitlin brought. Ultimately you can see bits and pieces of truth in all of it, because
it's all of the above.
Caitlin has been the conduit to this growth. She just has been. And so ultimately I understand the jealousy, like, well, wait a second, why are you watching her and you didn't watch us? But just accept the fact that your league has changed in really, for the most part, because of her just bursting on the scene.
I think what we who have been in women's sports forever and wondering why nobody covers it, right?
Yeah.
Or doesn't cover it consistently or the same way they cover men's sports or invest what they should. Right, there are two things happen, and I think we've talked about this. The NCAA got investigated for not investing in women's basketball the way they should, and that got remedied. And so you saw the league, the March Madness include women's brackets, include women's team. They got advertising. They could use the term March Madness, which they hadn't been able to before that. And all of a sudden, there was this explosion of growth, right? And she's right. She comes right at that time. So the wave comes. And then in the investment of money, and you get a star. And you get a star that convinces these guys who are like, women's basketball is not real basketball, that all of a sudden they're going to buy into. And I say she had all the things that women athletes have to have. They have to be attractive to men. They have, and everybody hates when I say that, but they do. And they have to be like universally, no one can argue that they're amazing.
Yeah.
They're great. They're incredible athletes, right? And they also have to be like good and interesting humans. And she has somehow fit that mold perfectly. at this perfect time, right? And so, but what has happened is she's handled it in a way that's helped and not hurt. And everyone hasn't done that, but Caitlin herself, Paige Buchers, was just on one of the Kelsey podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like she's doing the same. She's attempting to do the same thing, and it's creating a wave and a ripple and a popularity for women's basketball that's raising everybody. It's rising tide lifts all boats. They're the reason. They're the engine, right? But it's raising up everybody, and you're finding, fuller stadiums when none of those players, nobody knows. I mean, it's just. Asia Wilson's amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's always been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now Now you can see her you see her in an NBA game. The camera goes to her. The guys who didn't pay attention, who didn't know, the cameramen, the people who spend the money, the people who run the businesses, they all know now.
Yeah.
They're on the radar, and that's what soccer needs.
And you reference the way Caitlin's handled it. I just give her a lot of credit. She says the right things. She conducts herself well, and she's a competitor. Like, she doesn't back down from any of the physicality. She wants it. I feel like she's handled it really well.
100%. I've talked to a lot of women athletes about the time they are born in, or that they become, because sports is really cruel in one way, and that's to everybody, and that is the time is undefeated in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get this window, and if you miss your window, you're not the person. I always lament, like, what would Archie Manning have done if he were born in the time that Peyton Manning played football, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's just, there's things, people are born, or they're in a time. And so I've seen this with a lot of women athletes. I will say Lindsey Vann, ski jumper, that I mentioned before, was part of the lawsuit that got women included. She led the lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
She was a phenomenal jumper and probably would have won an Olympic medal in 2010. Women weren't allowed to participate. By the time she filed, she didn't want to be part of a lawsuit. She said, I never wanted to be an activist. I just wanted to be an athlete. Yeah. I'm sure that there are many, many days that Caitlin Clark said, I just want to play basketball. I just want to play the game I love, be with my teammates, and not be this figurehead or this symbol for women's basketball. You know, like, you can't do. You drop your coffee. Maybe you're rude to a TSA agent, right? Like, everything you do, you're under such a microscope.
Yep.
And that's what she didn't sign up for. But I can't imagine at that age how I would have handled it.
Oh, yeah.
I would have been, I wouldn't have had that moment, because I would have ticked somebody off or done something stupid, right?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You don't ask for it, but the way in which some people handle it, it makes life better for a whole lot more people than just themselves.
100%. I wanted to refer, before we catch a break, to the poll that you referenced. This is fans' self-declared favorite sport in America, according to The Economist. 36% American football, 17% basketball, 10% soccer now, 9% baseball, 4% ice hockey, 3% tennis, boxing, and golf, all 3% there. So according to The Economist, soccer is now the third most popular sport in the country.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't think that's wrong. And I think what you have, the problem soccer has, is the age out factor, the specialization factor, right? So you get kids playing. I mean, everybody wants to go watch the games they played, but you get kids give it up at some point, and I think some of that is comp soccer. Comp soccer is super demanding. You see it in other sports too, but and so kids choose something else. Maybe they would play soccer and basketball and baseball. Back in my day, that's what they did.
That's what we did, yeah.
But now, the coaches are like, are you serious? And you're like 8 years old, and you're like, man, I'm just starting third grade, and I can barely read, so I guess I should make a career choice.
Yeah.
But that's, I mean, like, I've like Justin Glad, like, deciding to go to academies at 10, 12, 13 years old. Like, I mean, I would have just cried for my mom every day.
For sure.
I don't care how talented I was. I wouldn't have made it. Right?
Yeah.
So I also wonder, and then we switched to college football later, but I wonder, like, I've been looking at these rating systems. I've always been fascinated with how we grade talent, because I've watched kids develop. I watched Britton Covey go from a guy that everybody said, like, this guy should really take up, like, golf or some individual sport. Like, somebody said, in middle-sized white guys can still play hockey, you know. But yeah, and the dude made it to the NFL, right?
Yeah.
So you don't know when this idea of, like, when is your peak? When are you blooming? Some kids are lazy because they got talent, and then they go to college and they turn into beasts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All right, we do have some breaking news before we catch a break. Looks like the Ravens are going to hire Jesse Minter as their head coach. He's the Chargers defensive coordinator. That's a great job. They obviously have a great quarterback in Lamar Jackson. 5 openings now in the NFL. All right, before we catch a break, let's get you the Uinta Golf PGA Tour update. There are no tournaments going on, so I'm just going to tell you about Uinta Golf. Get custom fitting at Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf for the new Cobra Optim drivers. The new Cobra Optim is the first driver to optimize POI and MOI. Don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. Experience straighter drives and more robust distance. Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf. Get there. More with Amy coming up next on ESPN 700. Going to do a little sports court today, as we do every Thursday with our friends over at Handy and Handy. 5 o'clock hour tonight, we'll get back to some of the NFL football storylines. The Baltimore Ravens are hiring Jesse Minter as their head coach. He's the Chargers defensive coordinator. So great job for him. And then if you missed Morgan Scally earlier with Sean O'Connell, we're going to bring that back to this show in the 5 o'clock hour because it was really, really good. Amy Donaldson is joining us live in the studio. You have an interesting experience to offer our listeners tonight. Amy, what do we have going on? Let's hear about it.
So you can come at the Taylorsville Hot Works, which is, I don't know if you've been to a Hot Works studio, but it's so the class is video. There's a TV, and then it's just a little hot studio. So it's about, you can turn the temperature up and down, but it's about 125 degrees. That's what they set it at. And then you do a workout. You can do yoga, Pilates. There's like a band, like a strength workout, hot buns, which I've never done. I probably should, but I didn't. But we cycle, and then there's rowing. And they have the bikes that you use with your arms, which I don't know why people do that. That's worse than anything
hard.
I've ever done in my
very
life.
hard, yeah.
My daughter made me do it for like 5 minutes, and I was like, I think I might die.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so you come, you arrive, and you, for $5, you get a journal, and I give you 2 prompts. Because I believe in choice, and like sometimes creativity moves you one way and not the other. So I hate like being boxed in by one idea. But the idea is that, for me, movement often opens up my creativity.
Oh, okay.
And I think that 2 things that you can do that will save your life are a little bit of exercise and journal. Nobody learns without reflection. That's why when you have an experience that you struggle with or that's really hard, you want to talk to somebody. You have to process that. If you don't reflect on it, you don't learn anything. And so journaling is an excellent way to learn. Especially if there are things you don't want to talk to people about. There are things that you're sort of working out yourself. And then, so after we get done with the workout, we gather again. I just I have a little thing that I am going to share. We're going to do it once a month. I'm just doing it for fun, mostly because I believe right now what people need most is connection and a little way to blow off some steam. That's not terrible.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's such an interesting thing to consider. And I listen to a lot of, like, Scott Galloway talks often about the male loneliness epidemic that goes on, and
There's not a gendered loneliness, just FYI. There's just a loneliness.
Right, but that's what Scott leans into, right?
I think what Scott's hit on, though, is how hard it is to make friends for men, whereas women, I think, are just like, we're social. I will make friends with a stranger at a restaurant if I need to, and Ed has basically had the same friends that he met through work for 100 years.
Yeah, my friends are my friends from college. Yeah. I'm not taking new applications, as Seinfeld would say, to make new friends. But it's interesting to hear him unpack, like, all the data where, like, 3 out of every 4 suicides now are males between the age of, like, 18 and 50. You know what I mean? And COVID obviously changed a lot of things and made people a lot more isolated. But now you have this scenario where we have a constant pull for our attention. Like, Scott talks about this all the time. The goal of AI is not to replace your other social media platform. It's to replace your mother. Like,
I would say something
they
else.
want you to be, they want to be your constant companion. And you see virtual dating where, people they think they're getting companionship via a platform or a phone or an algorithm. And really what it's doing, it's pulling everybody away from each other to the point where for some, they don't want human interaction because they prefer the addiction that they have on their cell phone.
Well, I think they don't want human interaction because it's complicated, right?
Like, maybe they don't know how to do it.
Having a friend. Yeah, I would say that's 100. Like, there's so many, and our lives have changed so much. I think social media was at first this way to connect, and then it became a reason for our disconnect. I think COVID, I actually started a writing group online during COVID, just over Zoom, because I missed communing with other people and just talking about interesting things we'd read or seen. Look, movies almost didn't survive COVID, and I'm not sure they will long term survive streaming.
Yep.
Because people were like, why wouldn't I sit in my house in my underwear and watch the movie? Why would I go to a theater? Like, these things that we just took for granted as ways to connect, ways to have these communal. It's one of the reasons we love sports is you have this communal emotional experience, and it is a way to connect to a greater thing, but also to the people that you love. Like some of my one of the things my dad and I do now every year for his birthdays, we do some sports bucket list thing, right?
Yeah.
And some of my best memories with him have been taking him to Fenway. The Utah BYU game is going to be on my list forever. But yeah, there's those are things that are both that can be intimate and connected to people you love and create a greater bond. But they're also connecting you to the larger world. And that's what we struggle with right now. And I think it's not gendered. I think there are different difficulties for women and men that we've been reluctant to acknowledge.
I wonder, because it's impossible to read the tea leaves as far as what the future is going to look like, because it feels like the world lives on the internet now. And you're like in one of two groups. You're either creating content or consuming it. And Tristan Harris, actually on Scott's pod, talked a lot about, live events, sports, things like that actually have a bright future because he anticipates humans are going to want to witness other humans doing things because we're so pulled by robots and algorithms and AI and ChatGPT that's not a sustainable thing to put your energy and attention in, because at some point you're just going to want to be with other humans, watch other humans do cool things, as opposed to having your attention pulled with these what does Scott call them? Rage entrepreneurs.
Yeah, but I also think, maybe this is my background covering high school sports, but there's a way in which sports are still, like I said, like they rise up out of the community, or they bring it, or they create a community, or they bring a community together, or they take on or give a community identity. There's a lot of ways in which these things are. It's more than just like watching great athletic feats, right?
Yeah.
And so, I always say this: if you've probably been to these big sporting events, like a World Cup or the national championship game that I went to with my husband. Any of these Olympic events, anything like that. There's an energy that comes with when the Jazz were playing in the NBA Finals, like. There's an energy that comes with those events that almost feels like a living thing. Like it feels tangible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you feel like, I'll never forget taking Rachel, she was like 4 years old, in her cheerleading outfit and her cowboy boots to welcome home the Utah men's basketball team after they made it to the final game, right? So I think and I didn't know anything about anything. I was just trying to give my kid an experience.
Right.
But we did the same thing with the WNBA. I think there is just that yearning is not going to go away, and that's what sports always has over any evolution of anything. The thing that sports will struggle with at the professional and college, I would say college too, is the cost. And so there are people who are going to be, they're just going to be they will not be able to access it because it just costs too much, and that's where we have to try to hold on to like some level of high school competition or a club, some version of that at another level, because there are a lot of people who are locked out of college and pro sports because of the cost. And
also a lot of people, because you referenced the cost of attending games, but what doesn't cost anything, cable subscription or a streaming service you pay and you can watch it on your TV.
Yeah, but do you see how many streaming services you have to have?
No, I understand that.
One season of the NFL.
But so many people are. You're not wrong. In fact, the NBA watching experience this year has been wild. But because back to the original point of people not wanting to leave their house and enjoying the comfort of their own home. And by the way, I'm very guilty of that. Okay, I'm actually an introvert. Not a lot of people know this about me. The live TV rights that are being charged now, like the leagues that are consummating, the NBA signed a $72 billion television deal. And the reason is there's so many people that just prefer to watch it at home that the live TV rights are literally the lifeblood now of these leagues. That's where the money is coming from. It's not tickets. It's not food and bev. It's not merch. That's fine, but it's ancillary. It's live TV rights because so many people just want to watch it on their TV.
And that's the experience they want. And it will be at home alone or will be with their friends. And so you're doing, all of these leagues are also fighting uphill to say, come to a bar. There's a franchise of bars that was just going to show women's sports, right? And I was like, oh man, those women, they're really fighting. That's Don Quixote type right there, right?
Yeah.
But they've been successful. And the reason they've been successful is they've created community along with these sporting and food, beverage type things.
Yeah.
So it's an experience, right? And I do think that's the yearning for that will not go away. Whatever ebb and flow there is with what we want and what we don't want, I think people want connection. I see it all the time. I hear stories about it all the time in parenting, in education. People miss each other. We are pack animals by nature. You need connection, and if you don't get it, your brain will actually atrophy because you're too lonely, because you're too isolated. It's not good. There's nothing about it except that you should be quiet and do meditation and have some don't be like me and constantly be sucking in information. But by and large, loneliness does kill people.
What would you say? Because you say we need it, and then you say we want it. What would you say to people that don't think they need it or don't feel like they want it? Human connection. They feel like they get whatever they get whatever they need at home.
Okay, and I have these people in my family and in my life.
So do I.
Right, and I will tell you that it's fear. It is the same. Somebody said we were talking about, pitching ideas and asking for interviews. So I was lucky to cut my teeth on the crime and corrections beat because there isn't really a question that I'm afraid to ask after knocking on the door of a home and asking a father to talk to me about his 7-year-old kid killing his 6-year-old kid with the gun that he left out. Jeez. So once you are asked to do that as a journalist, there's not that many questions that you're like, that feels rude.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that, but what I've learned is that a lot of people don't ask for the interview or don't ask the question because they're afraid of rejection. And again, I did grow up a Gretzky fan, but I was like, you can't win if you don't try, right? Nothing happens if you don't. And have I failed? And I now have my share. I have a lot of fear, but I think what keeps people isolated is fear. They're afraid to be embarrassed. They're afraid of someone telling them they don't want to hang out with them. They're afraid of going to a party and no one talking to them. They're afraid of going to an event and not knowing something and feeling stupid. We have become so afraid of what we are not or don't have or someone might think of us, and that is where connection will heal. The interesting thing is there's a lot of people who through COVID, I think we had a collective trauma. We lost, I don't know what the millions of people that we lost, but there are people with long COVID, the shutdown. We lost businesses or a ton of race companies that just went out of business, and a lot of local companies. So there's a lot of loss and a lot of grief that happened through that we haven't really, I think, processed very well.
Just as a collective.
Yeah. Right? And so I think that one of the things we have to figure out as we go forward is how to do that together. And the only thing, you can heal trauma in a lot of ways, but the best way is through connection. And the interesting thing about sustaining a trauma is it usually came from exposure, and what your mind and your heart and your soul are asking you to do is to do that again. And that's why I love sports.
Yeah.
Because what does every coach tell you should do? Get back on the horse. You got thrown, you got rejected. When I get turned down for something, when I get told off, when I get in trouble, the very first thing, if I know someone's mad at me about a story I did, I call them. I make sure that the last thing I do is let that fear change what I do or how I do it.
Yeah. The fear piece is really fascinating to consider because fear can be concealed in a number of different ways, and you may not even know that it's fear because it could manifest as an anxious feeling in your body, and you're like, wait, what is this?
What is anxiety? Anxiety is
right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So as you prepare to go out of your house, prepare to show up at a dinner with friends, or prepare to go to a party or a game or a concert, that nervous energy inside of you ultimately is something that if you push through it, you can find answers on the other side. But a lot of people don't want to push through it. Hence the comfort of my own home, right?
Well, and I think pushing through fear is not what most of us think is fun. If I say to you, you have to have more joy, be more playful in your life. The last thing you're going to do is what scares me the most and how am I going to do that? Right.
Counterintuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. But my dad is a prime example of this. He hates he has to sit next to a stranger. So I go with my dad and my husband are both introverts, and they both do not want to interact with people that they don't know if they don't have to. And I will be best friends with strangers all day long. My kids are like, "Oh, please don't let this woman talk to someone else." You know?
Yeah.
And I had to sit in between them at the Utah BYU game. So they were both sitting by strangers, and it was really fascinating to me to watch how they handled that. And that's one of the things I have had this theory that's what it is. It's this fear. It's not I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable because I don't want to be afraid. I don't want to be uncomfortable is where you grow.
Mm-hmm.
Look, again, this is the lesson of every sports team you've ever played on. Get uncomfortable. Do the thing you're afraid of. You suck at that, do it more.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say, "Oh, I'm bad at running, so I'm never going to run again." Great athletes do the thing they're bad at even more.
Yeah.
And that's what makes them great. And I would say that's about everything. I have dyslexia. I couldn't read. I was the slowest reader on the planet until end of second grade. I could basically read, and I didn't like reading for a couple years more. It was a teacher who read aloud to us, and I thought, I want to know that story, right? And it was a 10th grade journalism teacher who said, writing is expression. Don't worry about the rules. Do it. Just stop being afraid, because what you're afraid of, no one's thinking about you. No one cares about you.
Right.
That's not an issue.
Yeah.
And, we've all had the experience of going to a party or going to a dance and feeling awkward and like no one's talking to me and what do I say? Or someone asks you a question and you feel stupid because you don't know what the heck they're talking about, right? Like those are all fear-based things that keep us comfortable in our loneliness.
Yeah.
And I will say, you just got to be uncomfortable until you're not uncomfortable anymore.
Yeah, this Joseph Campbell quote just came to mind. Quote, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasures you seek." Right? So, like, lean into the things you're afraid of. But it's hard. It's easier said than done,
I say this all the time. We sit in a prison of our own making.
Yeah.
And we decorate it, and we say it's like the greatest palace ever, and we want out.
Yeah.
We want a white knight to come save us and, carry us off to bigger and better places with no pain.
It doesn't
happen.
No, it doesn't. I just find it interesting to consider the people who I know and their relationship with being alone and their relationship with loneliness. And I moved away from my family at a very young age, and they're all back east, and I'm a single dad. Mm-hmm. And so for whatever reason, I've had to learn to adapt to a lot of alone time. So alone time doesn't bother me. Like I'm fine with it, but I have other friends who are single that are terrified to die alone and are doing everything they can to try to meet somebody at all times. Yeah. So I guess it's to each their own. But if because I've got a lot of great friends that I've known forever. So I do force myself to go engage. And I'm always glad when I do. I don't know, again, that I would be interested in going to meet new people. But as far as hanging out with my people, I still very much enjoy that.
I would say, like, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
I just had a foster dog adopted. And, she has to do, like, my dogs they're regimented. I work, so they have to be in a kennel or, there's rules at my house. Like she was getting adopted where she's the only dog. This huge backyard. There were active people. They were going to take her on all these walks. But when I left her, I was what saved her from the shelter. Mm. So I was better than the shelter. Mm. And she the look in her eyes, I've seen it with fostered almost 100 dogs now, broke my heart.
Yeah.
And I'm crying and I'm thinking about it. And I think, she just doesn't know how much better life can be. Mm. And she's not going to know until she just gets through this fear. Just like you think your life is bad. That's why change that happens to us when we didn't choose it is so transformative. Because we wouldn't have picked that hard road. We wouldn't have picked the road less traveled, right? Nope. But once we get on it and we start to like pick ourselves up from whatever, like, I don't want this. Right? If you get out of the self-pity, then the real growth, the real gifts come pouring down. And you're like, I didn't know my life could be this good.
Yeah.
I didn't know it could be better. Yeah. And so I think you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the amazing people that are out there that you might be like, I can't imagine my life without this person. Yeah. If you don't have those conversations, go to that party where you feel awkward, or just talk to the people at a grocery store, or somebody invites you to something that you think sounds weird, just go do it.
Yeah.
Like, I think I've done a lot of stuff that I thought, well, I wish I had that 2 hours of my life.
Right.
And I have had a lot of times where I didn't go do something and I thought, you know what? I should have gone. You know what I mean? Like, what do I lose? Mm-hmm. I sat here and watched a TV show I already have seen and hung out with my dogs who already worship me. Why not let the rest of the world worship me?
My grandpa, may he rest in peace, he always had this saying. He said, as I look back on my life, I'm most grateful for the experiences I wish I would have not had. Mm-hmm. You know, to your point about having change forced upon you, because that's hard, man. I mean, that's a tough thing. I know you got to get out of here, but now that we're just talking about fear, Morgan Scally had this awesome quote during his press conference, and I'm going to botch it. It was something along the lines of, the confident view change as an opportunity to get better. And, it
was, I think it was, the question was asked, what do you tell people who are afraid
of what's next type thing? Yeah. And I thought he handled it so well and encapsulated, I think, the feeling, quite frankly, across the community. There are some people that don't know what this is going to look like. There are another portion of people who are like, wait a second, how can it be better than what Kyle did? Kyle set a super high bar. Mm-hmm. And then there's a barrel of people that really believe that Morgan is the right guy for this moment. You know what I mean? I thought he handled that so well.
Well, and I think the reason he did is because he made room for all of those points of view, right? And I think his message there was there really isn't certainty. There's not certainty. There wasn't certainty if Kyle stayed. There's not certainty with him going forward. And that's the thing that's so, like, you just have to trust that. And let's be honest. You can say that about your life. I love my life. My life is great. My life has changed on a dime and been super devastating.
As is mine, as you know.
Yeah, and I always say, like, would I have chosen this? Heck no.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I can list you half a dozen things right off the top of my head that I would say I would not recommend this path to anybody. It was super painful. But I also thank God every single day that that's the path that I got to travel.
Yeah.
Because there was something about me and something about my mindset that needed that thing to happen for me to become the next best version of myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm always grateful to wake up. Like, it's so easy to take things for granted. It's so easy to be lulled into a sense of security and comfort. And that's where we want to live. We want to live in the comfort. We want to live with certainty. There's nothing. Neither of those things actually exist.
You fool yourself into believing they do.
That you can have them in this moment only. There's nothing guaranteed tomorrow.
Yeah.
That is one other thing I got from covering journalism in general, but covering crime and corrections. You go out the door in the morning, and you might come home to an empty house at the end of the day. Your bowl of cereal might be the last bowl of cereal you have. Mm. So there's nothing guaranteed. Why not eat, drink, and be merry?
Yeah.
Like, why not taste everything? Why not talk to everybody? Why not learn everything you can?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great message. And before I say you lose, I found the quote from Morgan, so I'll just read it real quick. I said, quote, change can be difficult for a lot of people. People leave an organization and there's doubt, there are fears, there are questions. Fear has a significant psychological impact on the mind. To the fearful, it's threatening because it means that things may get worse. For the hopeful, it's encouraging because things may get better. And to the confident, it's inspiring because the challenge exists to make it better. I'm confident and excited for the future.
And I will add that I have had a year and a half, this last year and a half of my life, I've learned something really important about fear because I'm a naturally anxious person, something I perfected by age 5. And that is that you can't be afraid and grateful at the same time.
Love it.
If you are really steeped in that fear and you're like, I don't want to go, here's really good reasons why I can't go, why I don't want to talk to somebody, why I don't want to connect or change my life or whatever it is, then just say, what am I grateful for? If this goes terribly, what am I going to be glad about?
Yeah, I love that, Amy. I think it's powerful. This is a Sports Talk radio show. If you've just tuned in for the first time, tell our listeners one more time what you have going on tonight.
So you can come to HotWorks and you can do a workout, and we'll give you a couple of prompts. And one of those prompts you can do, I'll give it to you here, so you can just do the prompt on your own if you're sitting in your house. And that is write a thank you letter to something that is draining you.
Draining you.
Interesting. I promise that if you do this, you will gain some insight about something that's bothering you.
I love it. Well, love your perspective. It's always great to see you. Okay, we'll get you back on soon. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll catch a break. Handy. Little sports court coming up. We'll get back to the college and pro football storylines in the 5 o'clock hour. It remains a Sports Talk radio show, so everybody relax right here on ESPN 700. Sports Court time. You guys know what time it is. We do it every Thursday right about now with our good friends Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Gentlemen, happy Thursday. How we doing?
Hey, Spence. Happy Thursday.
Appreciate your time today. So let's jump into it. This is a hot button topic in the world of college basketball because once upon a time when you left college and played in the NBA, you could, not come back and play college ball. It's starting to change, though. So a judge in Alabama has granted a temporary restraining order allowing a basketball player that had signed with the Spurs to go back to Bama. Unpack this for us.
Yeah, Spence. Eligibility is the name of the game these days, and it has spawned some good content for Sports Court. When I read this headline, ex-Alabama player allowed to return to college 3 years after entering the NBA draft, that gets your attention. I mean, that's kind of like shocking. So our guy, Charles Bediako, is a 7-foot player who 3 years ago was an all-SEC defensive player team, played for Bama. Well, he entered the NBA draft 3 years ago. Didn't get drafted, but he did. He never played in an NBA game, but he did play for 3 different NBA teams and their G League teams. Well, now Charles in charge is deciding that he wants to go back to college, and he wants to go back to Bama. Says he has eligibility left, and big surprise, Alabama, number 17 in the country, they want Charles back too. So the NCAA said, "Hey, not so fast. You've used up your eligibility," and they've stated that they won't allow this, will not grant eligibility to any prospective returning student athletes who have signed an NBA contract. Eligibility rules ensure high school students get a shot of earning scholarships. Charles points to, we talked about this a few weeks ago, a player that played in Europe, as a pro, which apparently the NCAA sees as differently, was allowed to go back to Baylor. And so now Charles, because the NCAA says, no, you can't play, he has sued the NCAA under what? Antitrust laws, saying that this violates, this is anti-competition, it violates my opportunity to compete and to earn an NIL contract. So for now, what always happens is these players, they file a lawsuit, and, lawsuits take a long time to go, and make it through the process. So initially they file, in his case, he filed a request for a temporary restraining order. And the court, they don't want to mess up. So they granted the temporary restraining order. They granted a 10-day temporary restraining order and have set a hearing to hear this. Basically, they're saying to the NCAA, for now, you cannot enforce your eligibility rules. We're going to hear this and decide what's going to happen here. So for now, he's eligible. I mean, the headline's a little misleading. He's eligible for now. He might be able to play in a couple of Alabama games until the hearing and see what the court ultimately says. But it is a big shift, and, it's I don't know. I think most people see this as kind of a big concern.
All right, Garrett, over to you, bud.
Yeah, I mean, it's really this. He wants a redo, right? I mean, he's going to look back on this and realize, hey, in 2023, when I said I wanted to leave school and declare for the draft, he's realizing, well, at the time he probably didn't make the right decision. He didn't get drafted like I guess he thought he would. And so now he wants to do over and go back to college. But like Preston said, this one's significant because he was already in college, left, and is coming back. So it's a case we'll need to watch close.
Over to college football now, and a story that's received a lot of attention as Duke University is set to maybe lose their quarterback, Darian Mensah, after he agreed to terms to come back. They were granted a temporary restraining order that prevents Mensah from enrolling at and licensing his NIL to another college, at least until February 2nd, which is only a few weeks away. Word is Miami wants this young man. He's a very good player. What's the latest?
Yeah, exactly right, Spence. I mean, he signed a contract in December of 2024 with Duke, a 2-year deal, which granted Duke his NIL rights and, of course, that he was going to stay there and play. And so had a great year last year with Duke. I think they won the ACC regular season championship anyway. And so now, last minute, right, last Friday afternoon, just as the transfer portal is closing, tells Duke he wants to enter the portal. So it sets this whole thing into motion, and Duke has filed a lawsuit and requested their own temporary restraining order. And again, the court had to jump on this quickly just because of the timelines with the portal where, after a player says they want to enter, the school's got 2 days to do that. And so with the holiday weekend and the MLK holiday, the case was heard, and the court did grant the TRO, and again said that he can't enroll in another school, and that he can't, license his NIL rights to anyone else. But that, what it doesn't say, it doesn't prohibit him from having his name entered in the portal. So this case is a little bit in limbo right now, but I think the judge was kind of seeking a little bit of a middle ground. There will be another hearing on February 2nd where they'll consider a preliminary injunction. And funny enough, the case was filed in Durham County, North Carolina. This judge who made the decision has now withdrawn from the case because I guess his wife works for Duke, and I don't know if he's an alum or not, but another judge is going to be on the case. So, again, it's kind of interesting. This is the other thing I was going to note. This is the same lawyer that was representing DeMond Williams, the Washington QB, who pulled the same thing, but got cold feet and backed out a couple days later and apparently staying at Washington.
All right, Preston, you're up, bud.
Yeah, why this is interesting is this is a university suing the player, not the player suing for eligibility rights. And Duke's getting ahead of it. And really what they're looking for is they're not looking for money from this quarterback. They want what's called specific performance. They're saying, hey, we have a contract. You agreed to it. We agreed to pay you this. You need to perform on the contract. We want you on the field. We want you as our quarterback. And everyone's like, okay, now you're suing him. Is this going to create some weird situation? I think it does. I mean, Michael McCann in his analysis points out a couple of really, I think, interesting legal issues. It says, even after a player signs a contract, should a college be able to legally block that student, a student athlete, right, from who enrolls voluntarily at that school from transferring to another school? And then he also says, well, can they block him if he quits the team at Duke? Can they block him from playing from another team? Can they stop him from playing from another team? And that will bring up all kinds of antitrust issues, but it opens the door for all kinds of things. I think, and Miami, another ACC team, Duke's going to hate to look across the line from him and see him playing for Miami, right? So my guess is he ends up back at Duke. That's my bet. So
I hope he does. And I just want to add one thing. I mean, ultimately, the timing of this makes it impossible for Duke to go get another quarterback. That's the other issue. Like, transfer portal is come and gone. The best quarterbacks have already signed. If he leaves, they don't have a QB. So, look, I'm all for player empowerment, choosing where you do what you do. But this feels like one where the kid should probably honor what he said and go back. But we'll move over to another situation in college football involving a quarterback that we all know, Trinidad Chambliss, who had a hell of a year for Ole Miss, is suing the NCAA over his denied 6th year of eligibility. What's the latest here?
Yeah, again, eligibility is the name of the game, and Trinidad Chambliss, he's on the all-name team for sure. So he's filed with the NCAA for a 6th year, and his basis was that in the 2002 year, he claimed that he was incapacitated due to some injuries, while playing for the powerhouse Ferris State. He's saying, but the NCAA is coming in saying, look in the documentation, and they say, hey, the proper documentation from that time period wasn't provided, and that and it was based on development needs and our team's competitive circumstances. They're basically saying, we don't really buy that you were injured. You didn't want to play that year, and you sat out. And now he's looking for a 6th year. So, again, we get into this thing where he's suing the NCAA. He has requested a preliminary injunction, basically saying, hey, if you're allowed to apply these eligibility rules, it will create irreparable harm, and I won't be allowed to earn money that I could have otherwise. They're saying, so the courts they lean towards granting this initially before the thing plays itself out. And, the patron saint of this is who? Diego Pavia. He got a preliminary injunction, and it never was really played out in the court. Injunction was in place, and basically for that time period, he was able to play, right? So he kept playing. And I think it's interesting because Chambliss, or Trinidad Chambliss, he's ranked as the number 3rd quarterback in the draft. So you're wondering, do you really risk going for another year with Ole Miss and maybe getting hurt where you are potentially going to be a first-round draft choice? So it's an interesting thing, and and he has signed an NIL deal with Ole Miss, and I guess he's weighing those options. But hopefully, I think right now we'll see the court grant the preliminary injunction.
Garrett, over to you, buddy.
Here's the quick stats on this, because we've seen a lot of these cases and with mixed results. So 26 preliminary injunctions have been denied, 10 injunctions have been granted, and 5 of these lawsuits are still pending. So it's across the board, but most of the cases, these preliminary injunctions have been denied.
Interesting. All right, over to the NBA. This news broke a few months back. So it's the Clippers situation. Steve Ballmer is seeking the dismissal of a fraud case, which is connected to the Kawhi Leonard situation and some payments that may have been, shall we say, illegal. What's the latest?
Yeah, and this is a little complicated, I think. But you had this company called Aspiration, which is in essence a sponsor, and they had their own investors in their company. And the way this scheme, I'm going to call it, is now coming out because of this lawsuit that's been filed by these investors in the company against Steve Ballmer, is they basically said, hey, look, they had us invest money with the company, and had Steve Ballmer invest in their company, and then the company would then funnel the money to Kawhi Leonard. So they're basically saying, hey, this was just a scheme to allow Steve Ballmer to get around the salary cap, and that we've been used as part of this process. And we didn't want to get wrapped into this and tied into it, but this isn't, we want out. This isn't our problem. And so, of course, as a side to this, there is an NBA investigation into this issue about, this Aspiration paying Kawhi Leonard the money so that they could get him to re-sign with the Clippers. But now you've got this lawsuit between the investors and Steve Ballmer. And so it's, I don't know, like I said, kind of a complicated case, but significant for the NBA regarding the salary cap question.
Over to you, Preston.
Yes, procedurally what's happened now is Ballmer has come in and I think it said he filed a demurrer, but essentially he's asking the lawsuit to be dismissed. He claims accusations are sensational and patently false. Those are things they put in there. So he wants this to end now and not go down the road. Again, he's got duties, fiduciary duties to investors and shareholders. So he's fighting it on two fronts right now.
All right, moving over to another college player looking for a preliminary injunction for 5th year of eligibility. This one has been denied. Help us understand why.
Yeah, I'll say it again. Eligibility is the name of the game. And this one is interesting. What we had is these 5 players. We've talked about it before. These are 5 players that they played out all of their 4 years of eligibility. And they didn't take a redshirt year. And they said, hey, wait a minute. That's not fair for these other players to get 5 years, 5 years of earning potential now, really, right? And for us to only get 4, and now we're out. And we know the eligibility rule in college has traditionally been you have 5 years to play for and use your years of eligibility. Well, they filed, again, claiming antitrust, that they're not allowed to compete. And interestingly enough, the judge came back and said, I'm not granting your preliminary injunction, said the players did not make a case that they would likely succeed on their claim that the NCAA violates U.S. antitrust laws with its redshirt rule. And what's interesting is this judge is the same judge who ruled in favor of Diego Pavia. So she is very, very familiar with the rules of eligibility, the back and forth, the nuances of them, and, and applies them correctly.
All right, Garrett, you're up, pal.
I was just surprised on this one. I thought the judge was going to grant it. Like Preston said, considering this was the judge that granted it for Diego Pavia. I mean, different facts, but just thought it was going to go the other way.
Final one for today, the latest with the Riverside sex abuse trial. The church has settled with a former player, so we're starting to see some of this stuff kind of unfold. What's going on here?
Well, yeah, and we've talked about this the past couple of weeks, this case. This is an abuse case, sex abuse case that happened in the 70s and 80s with this comp team out of New York, and regarding their coach and really benefactor and sponsor, this multimillionaire attorney that ran the team. And so this has been an ongoing trial, and with a lot of explosive testimony, but it looks like they've reached a settlement and done this kind of in the 11th hour, and probably both sides seeing that how the evidence was coming down in the testimony, and they're gauging that as they go through the process, and just made a decision, and so looks like some resolution happening.
All right, Preston, final word is yours.
I'd like to know the amount of the settlement. It'll be confidential, but I think the church, with the testimony coming in, they saw this. Apparently, it was right before the case went to the jury, so I think they saw this as a potential that could explode. And what's interesting is there's 26 pending cases, so I think this will be the kind of the litmus test for these other cases. I think they will run out right now and try to settle those cases.
All right, guys, before I set you loose on this Thursday afternoon, for any of our listeners who have legal questions, how do they get a hold of you over at Handy and Handy?
Yeah, give us a call. Love to talk to any listeners out there with your questions, especially in the area of personal injury. That's really what we do. We help people who've been injured in accidents. You can reach us at 801-264-6677 or go to our website, handylawutah.com.
Thanks so much for the time. Have an excellent weekend. And, of course, as always, go Utes.
Thanks, Spence. Go Utes.
Thanks, Spence.
Garrett and Preston Handy from the law firm of Handy and Handy. Before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Uinta Golf. You can get custom fitting at Uinta Golf right now by Worldwide Golf for the new Cobra Optim drivers. The new Cobra Optim is the first driver to optimize POI and MOI. Don't know what that is, but it sounds pretty cool. You can experience straighter drives and more robust distance. Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf. Get there. I was there the other day. They've got great deals. Take advantage of it now before the weather gets warm and the deals are off the table. All right, 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. If you missed Morgan Scally earlier with Sean, it was a great interview, about 20, 25 minutes. We're going to replay that coming up in just a little bit. But coming up on the other side, we'll get to the drive at 5, recap some of the stories of the day today. The Baltimore Ravens have a new head coach. We'll tell you who that is. And then we'll play the Morgan Scally interview with Sean O'Connell. We will say goodnight at 6 o'clock and send it over to the Alex Jensen Coaches Show right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time on a Thursday afternoon. We're looking at about 3 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. You're almost to your weekend. You're almost to a weekend that features Championship Sunday in the world of the NFL. The conference championship games coming up. Hopefully, both will be really, really good. The later game is between the Rams and the Seahawks. This will be the third time since 1980 that two teams in the NFL have met in the playoffs, where one is the number one offensive scoring team, that is the Rams, and the other is the number one defensive scoring team, that would be the Seahawks. In the prior two meetings, the defensive team has won both those games. Green Bay beat Philly in 2014. And, Philly beat Green Bay, And then the other one, went the way of the defense. So if this form holds, Seattle, who is a favorite at home, should be able to get that one done. Seattle's the Vegas favorite to win the Super Bowl this year. The early game, the Patriots and the Broncos. Feel bad for my Bronco fan friends, as Bo Nix, unfortunately, will be out, and it is the Jarrett Stidham Show, who has not started an NFL football game in a number of years. Now, speaking of the conference championship games, I have some very good news because our friends at Prize Picks has just offered a max discount for you. Sam Darnold is dealing with an oblique injury, but my guess is he can throw for 1 yard. Go out on a limb and say Sam Darnold's going to pass for 1 yard. So that's your max discount on Prize Picks. The big game's almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, it also means it's your last chance to get into the football action before next season. So close the season out right with Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. You can find your community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends, copy lineups from winners. With a single click, you can copy lineups you like, or just use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us and tail and fade our picks with just one click. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup, because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. So again, Sam Darnold, max discount 1 yard. And you add one other pick to that selection, you can win up to 2,000 times your cash. All right. We've had a fun show today. Kyle Bonagura started things off for some college football. Tomorrow is technically the deadline for the power brokers and decision makers in college football to decide if they are going to expand the college football playoff format. As of now, it is 12 teams. The proposal that is trying to be pushed through by basically the SEC is to expand to 16 teams as soon as next year. They're receiving pushback. The Big Ten has indicated that they would accept a 16-team format with a promise that in a couple of years they're just going to move straight to the 24-team format. And we talked to Kyle Bonagura about this. That's the FCS format, and it's always been the model. I've talked about it for years. I've heard a lot of people talk about it for a number of years, and it works. There's a reason why the FCS hasn't tinkered with it in years. It is the perfect format for this tournament. But the other takeaway here, and this is applicable for our local in-state teams, as a result of the schedule release in the Big 12 yesterday, we now know what the path is ahead for BYU, for Utah, for all the Big 12 teams. And we also know the path ahead for Texas Tech. And the fact of the matter is, Texas Tech will enter the calendar season as the favorite to win the Big 12, and they have deserved that. They have earned that. They deserve it, is what I should say. But if we stay at 12, if there is no expansion in the college football playoff format, just be prepared for Texas Tech to be the only Big 12 team to go back to the college football playoff next year. They play Abilene Christian and Oregon State to start things off. They'll be in Corvallis. Once upon a time, maybe a tricky trip. All due respect, not really their fault, but no longer a tricky trip anymore. As you look at Texas Tech's 4 hardest games, they avoid really the only 2 teams with a puncher's chance, in my opinion, on paper. And I don't want to be too disrespectful to Houston. They got some things going on, maybe TCU as well. But it is BYU and it is Utah. Those are the 2 teams that, at least on the field, would have a puncher's chance to make Texas Tech uncomfortable. I reference Houston. They get Houston in Lubbock. They're going to play Sam Houston in Lubbock as well. So their non-con features Abilene Christian, Sam Houston, and Oregon State. Just give me a break. They get Houston at home. They get Arizona State at home. They get Arizona at home, and they get TCU at home. Those are their 4 hardest games. They're all in Lubbock. That's a tough place to play, as we know. Their road games this year are Colorado, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Cincinnati, which could be kind of interesting because Brendan Sorsby will be playing quarterback for Tech, and he's going to go back to Cincinnati. If we don't expand, Texas Tech, not only on paper, but now that we have their schedule, they are going to roll through that schedule. I would be stunned if they lose 1 game. They avoid BYU and Utah. Of course, BYU also avoids Texas Tech. BYU's path is interesting because they are going to have a really tough matchup against Notre Dame in Provo on the 17th of October. The thing with that, though, I think Notre Dame is probably going to be a top 5 team for most of the season. BYU could probably lose that game and still qualify, of course, for the conference championship if they handle their conference games. The November 7th matchup between Utah and BYU, for all intents and purposes, could very well be a play-in game to make it to the Big 12 Conference Championship. But all of that might be a moot point. Like, the bottom line is, regardless of what Utah or BYU, regardless of what you do during the regular season, you're going to have to go to Arlington on a Friday night in December, by the way, for the first time, and beat Texas Tech to qualify for the CFP. That's my best guess. Now, of course, all this could change. It is January 22nd, I believe. And so, obviously, it's impossible to analyze and predict. But the conference, the College Football Playoff Committee, and the folks in charge and the decision makers and power brokers, for all intents and purposes, for the past 2 years, have told all of us early on that if you want to come to our party, you have to go win your conference. The Big 12 is a 1-bid league. If they expand to 16, we'd have a different conversation, but I'm not sure that they're going to. But tomorrow is the deadline, and so we might have some more information in that direction. All right, there are now 5 jobs open in the NFL as Jesse Minter has taken the Baltimore Ravens job. He is the Chargers defensive coordinator. So there's your breaking news in the NFL. But coming up on the other side, if you missed this, stay tuned. Sean O'Connell, Morgan Scalley, they were teammates back in the day. If you don't know much about Morgan, you're going to find out it was a great interview. That comes your way coming up on the other side. We'll get to the Alex Jensen Coaches Show at 6 o'clock right here on ESPN 700.
I've been looking forward to this conversation for weeks. Welcome in head coach for the University of Utah football team, Morgan Scalley. Not coordinator's corner anymore, people. It is the head coach. Morgan, welcome to the show. How are you?
What's up, dude? I'm the same boring guy, man. It's just a different title.
Look, you're anything but boring. All right. Have you watched back your introductory press conference? Did your agent make you do that? Did your wife make you do that? Did anyone say, Morgan, sit down and watch how you took over this room?
Brother, when have you ever looked back at something that it's that one of those deals like, I hate the sound of my own voice. It's like, I've not.
Well, I hope at some point consider it like tape study, consider it film, because it was a master class, man. It was wonderful to be there. It was great to see. And it was, I guess a little bit anticlimactic for you because you're already 1-0 as a head coach, but has it sunk in yet? Now that we're several weeks removed from the official handover happening, when you wake up in the morning and you come to the office and you see head coach Morgan Scalley on the door or wherever it's at, has it really sunk in? Do you think of yourself as the head coach of Utah football yet?
I'm trying to get there. I keep walking by my office thinking it's Kyle's. I'm going to see Kyle there. And I'm like, wait, hold on. That's my office. There's times where I walk into Derek Odom's office. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. It's just habit after so many years being here. But no, I can't believe we haven't even done, and I feel like I've done 50 million interviews. So the fact that we haven't done it on our flagship station, brother, I'm sorry.
Well, that's not your fault. We'll air our grievances with the people responsible for these types of things. But look, it's great to get an opportunity to do this, and the staff, putting together your own staff. I mean, I imagine, because you knew this was coming at some point, so I imagine you had ideas of who was going to get that phone call from you, who first, second, third options were going to be. I know that the landscape shifted so much in this cycle that maybe some of those phone calls that you planned on making you weren't able to make. But how was it putting your staff together? How many phone calls did it take? How many guys did you have to talk to?
Well, I mean, it was a fairly crazy process in the sense that it's like, okay, are we going to keep the guys on offense? Are they going to end up going to Michigan? And so this is something that I've done a study of throughout my career, not just as thinking I was going to be the head coach at some point. It's like, okay, who are guys that when you study ball or that you go against, you have a ton of respect for. And so I have just always kept not necessarily a Rolodex, but just a spreadsheet of guys that I'm like, man, these are good coordinators. These are, good position coaches, guys that I could see myself working with. And, one of the names that always popped up, not only from a schematic standpoint, but, a guy that's coached different positions on the offensive side of the ball. And then, when I got the head coach in waiting title, it seemed like every year that people thought I was going to be able to take over, the name Kevin McGiven would always be sent to me, texted to me. And I didn't, I hadn't spent a ton of time with Kevin. I just had watched his stuff, watched his film, watched his progression, and knew that that's a guy that I would love to work with. Just not only from a schematic standpoint, but just the way he looks at football. And if you sit and in an interview, as a defensive mind, there's certain questions I like to ask. There's certain questions I like to throw at offensive coordinators, and he is just so intelligent, and the way he talks about scheme and utilizing personnel, how to conflict a defense at different levels. It just was so refreshing to listen to him and to interview him, let alone to look at what he'd done at the different places he'd been. So, and then with all the different position coaches, same thing. It's like, okay, who have I looked at throughout the years? I say, yes, I'd love to work with this guy. He would fit what we do here, fits our culture. And it was just a matter of making those phone calls along the way. So, the preparation had been there. It's just a matter of reaching out and filling those roles as needed.
Okay, so you put a staff together, and concurrent with putting your staff together, you have to try to re-recruit your own roster and also figure out who is appealing to you in the transfer portal and try to get some of those guys to come. And that was an insane process. Some people we thought were going to stay ended up leaving. Some people we didn't think would be in the transfer portal and available for you to bring in suddenly are there. The player personnel standpoint, while you're also taking over the job for the first time and filling out your staff and being able to tell these kids, hey, this is who you will be playing for. I mean, how hectic is that process? And I promise there's a reason I'm asking you this question.
No, I understand. Yeah, it was, I think with the evolution of college football and what you're seeing with the transfer portal, it's difficult in the sense that when you're recruiting your guys and they come to the University of Utah and you have those ties with their family, with their parents, and you have these relationships that were built up over time, and those guys decide to go elsewhere, it can be very difficult because it's an emotional deal at that point, right? You have those ties, you have those relationships. But what we've had to learn is that, hey, listen, we still love the people that leave our program, but we have to focus and spend all of our time and attention, our energy and our love on those that want to be a part of this program, or those that we're bringing into our program. So, I think our coaches did an unbelievable job of identifying the holes we needed to fill as guys were transferring and we were bringing guys in, as well as I think it was very important for our players, and it worked out great, at least for me, that our players were able to see at least a glimpse of who I would be as a head coach at the bowl site, at the bowl game. And because the offensive players, as much as they've known me as a defensive coordinator and walking the halls, and I have great relationships with them, they haven't necessarily known the full Morgan Scalley, and so they got to see a glimpse of that as a head coach at the bowl game, and was a huge coup for us to be able to hold on to our two quarterbacks, and as well as them understanding that we wanted to make sure that the offense we brought in fit their skill sets. And if you look at what Kevin's done anywhere he's been, that's what he's been able to do, is adapt and innovate. And so they were really excited about Coach McGiven and his system and the coaching staff that we were bringing in. So in college football nowadays, it's not just recruiting the high school kids going out of the portal. You're every day recruiting your own guys. They have to experience something special while in your program. The culture's got to be such that the experience is so awesome that they don't necessarily want to leave, even if they're offered a higher price tag, right? And so it's creating that experience for the guys already in your program, that they know they're loved, they know they're valued, and they know that we're going to go win championships.
Your assistants and your players might be better people to ask this question, but I'm always curious about self-perception also. What are the differences between Morgan Scalley, defensive coordinator, and Morgan Scalley, head coach?
I guess a lot of that is I don't know yet.
Sure.
The biggest thing for me as a defensive coordinator is the biggest thing for me as a head coach, and that's establishing culture, making sure that everyone understands the behaviors that win championships, defining those for the people, providing clarity, holding guys accountable to it, and giving the support. But so I guess, from a head coach standpoint, it's making sure that every single person in the program, from staff, support staff to players, understand where we're headed and the behaviors that we're asking for, making sure they know they're valued, that they're a part of this journey, that it's not just a dictatorship. And so it's really been me getting to know all the people in our program and making sure they get to know me. There's that trust factor that needs to be built over time. But I think it's just a larger scale of creating and sustaining culture.
Utah head football coach Morgan Scalley, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show. How did you keep Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin on this Utah football roster? Because I know both guys and their agents were getting a lot of phone calls.
Right. I would say number one is they love Utah. They love being here. They love the fan base. Number two is they were excited about what we were bringing in, schematically, that it was going to be something very similar to what they had just gone through. They love their teammates. They love the guys that are coming back with them. And, in college football, to have what we have at the University of Utah with a fan base that sells out every home game, that has a passion, that shows their love for our players, and I don't know that they felt the need to go anywhere else. They've got what they need here and the opportunity to win a championship, and they're a combination of things for sure. And I'm excited that to have that leadership in the quarterback room, because both those guys walk the talk, and it's fun to see when your best players are also some of your best leaders.
I've been incredibly impressed with both of those guys. I know a big part of success for you next year offensively is also going to be replacing an offensive line that's sending. I think all five of those starters from last year are going to have an opportunity to play professional football. A couple of them are obviously projected to be first-round picks, and in making sure that position stays consistent, you also had to bring in a coach. And Jordan Gross has not been in this role at this level before this. Now, I have talked to enough people that know Jordan Gross a lot better than I do that say that lack of experience is not going to be a big deal here. But what made you so confident that he was the right guy, because he doesn't check the experience box, at least from a coaching at Division I football level box? What made you so confident that he was the right man for this role?
The guy is the smartest dude in the room, and when we came in at 1998 together, he was this tall, skinny, gangly offensive lineman, and I lifted more weight than he did. I'm like, "You're an offensive lineman, dude? What on earth?" I went on my mission. I came back, and the guy was hang cleaning 405 like it was nothing. I'm like, "What happened to you?" He just has a work ethic and a competitive mindset that you don't find many places. Why he's on the Ring of Honor with the Carolina Panthers, and why he played so many years in the NFL. He gets it. He understands offensive line play, but he also understands relationships, and he can coach. I'm not the only one that was trying to get Jordan Gross to coach. He had opportunities to coach in the NFL. So there's a lot of other people that understand his aptitude and his ability to coach and teach. And I tried to talk him into it a few years ago, and he just said with his kids and what he was doing with his family life, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And was I the luckiest dude ever that, the timing worked out, that it was right for him. The timing was right for him to come coach our guys up, and watch. This guy is a superstar. And I'm so fired up for the guys, for the our O block, the offensive line here. I think they're already seeing the benefit of having, an NFL All-Pro as their coach.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what that product looks like under your leadership, and obviously under the leadership of one of the all-time greats to play offensive line at the school. I mean, there's this. It could be used as a criticism, and I tried to bring up both sides of the argument. Like, the coolest thing at that press conference, you're like, "I'm a Ute, always have been, always will be." It gives me chills even repeating it, because it's such a rarity in college football now that the whole journey can be at this one place, and we hope it's the whole journey that's at this one place. I guess that'll depend on if you don't have NFL aspirations, maybe. But neither here nor there. Look, the insular nature of your experience at Utah, on only Utah, could be perceived as a potential negative when you're taking over a head coaching job and you're trying to fill out a staff, and you might not have the same network as everyone else. I've heard you address this before, but you haven't done it on my show. Did you feel handicapped in any way by the fact that you've only ever been in Salt Lake City and only ever been at the University of Utah when it came to filling out your staff?
I've never felt handicapped. I think you handicap yourself if you don't reach out and you don't. I mean, the amount of relationships I've built over the years with people from across the country, the connections I have down in Texas from recruiting, you handicap yourself, and people can say whatever they want to say. I remember being a graduate assistant and going to the National Coaches Convention. Which, have you ever been there, OC?
I've never been there for the coaches convention. I was in Orlando the same time it was happening. That's the one in Orlando, right?
It changes locations from year to year. It's been in Nashville, Orlando, San Antonio, you name it. So it goes all over the country, but I'm talking thousands and thousands of coaches show up to this thing, right? And you can go put your resume up on a board that no one looks at. And it's like 1,000 resumes. it's just guys looking to get into the profession, looking to do whatever. I'll never forget, I went to Urban, and Urban was coaching at Florida at the time, and he was big time. And I'll never forget just asking him, and I've talked to him about this, so we kind of laugh about it, but I just remember asking him, advice on what I should do, and I'll never forget. He says, "Well, you know what? I think so. I did this as a graduate assistant, but then I also did it as a position coach. So I think I was a position coach. We won the Sugar Bowl, and I was a position coach at the time, now that I remember it. And I go up to him and I'm talking to him about what I should do in my career path. And he said, "Morgan, I really think you need to get out from underneath Coach Witt, and you should go elsewhere, because at the end of the day, no one knows who Morgan Scalley is." And I never forgot that. And I was like, so why do I have to go someplace else for people to know who I am? And I just said, no, forget that. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to meet people. I'm going to learn and grow. And I did. I was sitting right next to Nick Saban as he asked me how we defended Mike Leach when Mike took over the head coaching job at Mississippi State, right? I sat with Kirby Smart, sat with Dan Lanning when Dan was at Georgia. Brent Venables came here. I've done so much of just developing and learning and doing everything I could to find out, what's the best way to play defense or the best schemes, the best lifting programs. I would go to the convention and look at all the different gadgets that people come up with. I've always been someone that wanted to innovate, that wanted to create. And I never thought that, you had to go other places to learn about different cultures, different backgrounds. And I've been able to do it at Utah. And, you get to a place where, okay, if you just put your head down and grind and work and you extend yourself to people and you go out and meet people. And, who would have thought that an LDS kid, from Salt Lake City, Utah would ever become one of the top recruiters in Houston, Texas? It's because it's all about relationships. It doesn't matter name or what logo you have. People like people. So I got out there and I extended myself and I learned and I asked questions and I finally got to the point where I was like, I don't need to go anywhere. And I've looked around, and when I said we can win a national championship here, I truly believe that. You look at the people we have here, the fan base that we have here, the high school coaches here in Utah have done an unbelievable job of developing talent. You look at all the teams coming to Utah to recruit. Look all over Twitter and look at the amount of teams that are coming to Salt Lake City, Utah to recruit our guys. If we can keep all of our guys here in state, you can't tell me we can't do it. You can't tell me.
Well, I'm not gonna tell you that, especially after we all just watched Indiana win a national championship. Do you find inspiration in that, the fact that there's now like a new kid on the block that was able to achieve at the very, very highest level, when 5 years ago, if you would have brought this up as a possibility, you'd have been laughed out of any room. But Curt Cignetti and the Indiana Hoosiers just pulled it off.
100%. So that's why I've never felt that I needed to leave. And it's like we've got what we need here, and now it's just a matter of everyone buying into it.
How complete is your roster right now? How many scholarships are left to give out? The transfer portal, you can't enter your name into it anymore unless you were in that national championship game. You can't enter your name into it anymore, but there's 3,000 kids in there that are all, I imagine you're still interested in some. How close is this team to being a complete roster?
We're within 1 to 2.
Oh,
so
nice.
We've actually done a pretty good job of filling holes, and we're excited with the group we have. It's so much of it is getting the guys here, and particularly with a new offensive staff, just like last year with Jason, is you want to hit the ground running. You want these guys in the weight room developing. You want to get out there and start teaching these guys and our coaches, in the film room. So the development during the off season is such a huge deal, taking advantage of the hours that we have, and then getting them ready for spring ball. So that was a priority. Obviously, you don't want to just fill holes to fill holes. You want to fill them with the right guys, but we've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. And we still got maybe 1 to 2 left to fill, but we're in a good situation, a good spot. And, it's after January right now, everyone's on the road recruiting or in-state recruiting. And then once we come back in February, that's the signing date in February, then it's all about, us with our players and making sure that culture is what we want. And the journey begins, man.
Utah head football coach Morgan Scalley for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show. I wish I had like another 45 minutes because I could keep this thing going, but I'll respect your time, and I appreciate what you've given us already. Colton Swan, I love Colton Swan. After I left Utah and transferred to Weber State, he was on the staff there, and I was impressed with him from then all the way through what he is now. How'd you know he was the right guy to make the defensive coordinator, to replace the honorable, venerable, very accomplished Morgan Scalley himself?
Oh, boo. No, Swan is so bright, so organized, a great teacher. He's a guy that's coordinated before. He's done it before. He's provided me so much insight when I was a coordinator, helped me along the way. He's tough as nails. He's our culture to a T. And people are going to really get to know Colton Swan. That's what I'm excited about, is for people to get to know the Cowboy. This is a guy that he still competes in rodeo.
I know.
I don't know if you, yeah. And every single year, we've had these opportunities to have each coach stand up and present something to the players. Well, every year he presents a new event in the rodeo and explains how it's judged, and our guys are just enthralled. I wish everyone could see him present a rodeo event. This guy is tough as nails, and he's as good as they come. So I have no doubt whatsoever, plus that staff is so good for him, that he's going to flourish and succeed. And, I'm just excited to be now kind of a fly on the wall whenever he'll let me in the room.
How good are you at delegating? How much of a micromanager are you? Because there's always, we don't really know as fans, media members, right? Like how much that coach is not letting his offensive coordinator do what he wants to do, or, oh, that guy's defensive minded, so he's got his fingers all over this defense and he won't let Colton Swan spread his wings and fly. Like how difficult or natural is it going to be for you to be the CEO and to be the guy that says, hey, there's a reason you're my offensive coordinator and play caller. There's a reason why you're calling my defensive plays right now. I am going to let you do your job. Or, this is your program for the first time. Do you want to make sure you keep your thumbprint on it?
Well, I just want to provide help. That's what Kyle did for me when I was a young coordinator, and I wanted him in the room. I wanted his thoughts. I wanted him to be able to say, hey, you may want to think about this, just because he had all that experience. And, but no, it's very important for me, for our coordinators to know how much confidence I have in them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have hired them to do the job. Being a head coach is much more about being a CEO, and my responsibilities and my calendar is going to be a lot different than what it has been in the past. And I'm fully aware of that. I unless you're in the seat, you really don't know all that it entails, and I'm learning as I go. But I have been prepared for a lot of it, and so it's. I'm there as a sounding board. I want them to understand, hey, listen, we've talked about during the hiring process what we're looking for, what we want, complementary football, and it's up to you guys to get together and make sure that happens. And I'm a sounding board in the process. I'm excited to sit in an offensive room and just sit back and listen to them and be like, no, that's not going to work. This is what we would do I want to be on the offensive side of the ball and give some creative thoughts as to how to beat a defense, and that's what I'm excited about. I've always wanted a year sabbatical where I could just go and sit in offensive rooms and listen to them talk about what's going to work, what's not going to work, and just see what they're looking at.
In a perfect world, what is the identity of a Utah football offense with Morgan Scalley as the head coach?
I think it's what I said in the press conference. It is physical. You can never get away from physicality in this game. It will be exposed at the highest level, for good or for bad. And you look at how physical Indiana was, right? And their identity, and is just. Will always be a part of the game. So physicality and innovation, the ability to do what you do it at a efficient rate, but also create, adapt, be ahead of the game in terms of how we can use personnel and how we can, gain a distinct advantage, based on the guys that we got in the room.
How will you treat the Holy War, the BYU rivalry game?
What do you mean?
Sometimes there's a countdown clock in the weight room. You got 255 days before you have to fight the team down south, whatever. Some coaches lie to us and say, it's just any other game. How will you – I mean, you cared about it since you were in diapers. You played in it. You coached in it.
Yeah, and you've got Morgan Scalley sound bites to remind me.
Well, yeah,
right?
but Morgan Scalley, the head coach, I mean, it's the most important day on the Utah sports calendar every year, and you are now one of the two most important figures in that rivalry game of that most important day. So how will you approach it?
The way I've approached it for the last while is that you have to treat every game like it's your Super Bowl. Otherwise, you'll never get there. If you treat BYU differently than you treat, Texas Tech or Kansas State, you're doing it wrong. And that's allowing emotions to get in your way of doing what we want to do. It's all about behavior. So yes, I want to beat BYU. And I talked to Kalani. Kalani's one of my best friends. We went through the fire together at some point during our careers, and we'll be going to dinner together and all that stuff. That's my friend. But I told him, dude, I love you, and every time I play you, I want to beat you by 50. That's just how it is. That's just we are competitive souls. And but I have no hatred towards Brigham Young University. No, there are guys: Justin, Enna, Aaron Roderick, Chad Kaha'a, Gary Anderson, guys down there that I love, that I have relationships with. But again, it doesn't mean that I don't want to ruin them when we play them. That's just how it is. That's the competitive nature of this game, and I'm a competitive dude.
Is your relationship with Kyle Whittingham in a good place right now?
I would hope so. Yeah, we were together last night. Gave him a big hug, and that's my guy. Now, have Kyle and I always seen eye to eye on things? No. Have you always seen eye to eye with your boss? On every single thing that you do? If so, man, congratulations, OC. You've had I love that.
I will not make that claim, Morgan. I am not the easiest guy to work with.
No, I don't think, anyone that works with someone for as long as we work together is going to see eye to eye. But I've always been 100% loyal to Kyle Whittingham. That's a guy that I love. He's mentored me, given me every shot along the way to progress in this profession. And I will always love that man and wish him nothing but the best. Was with him last night at the Outland Trophy Award banquet for Spencer Fauna. What an unbelievable award for him, an honor for him. But no, I think I was maybe me and Doug Ellisai, I think were the two that were with Kyle throughout his entire time as head coach. I barring my 1 year of trying out the NFL, but I don't think you can spend that much time with someone and not love them. Otherwise, I would have left a long time ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. We got the schedule released yesterday. Did you circle the games that you care about more and just, oh my gosh, this road? I mean, I'm always asking that facetiously, but what do you think your schedule as it rolled out yesterday?
I don't care. We play who we play, and we play who we play. And you give me the time and date, we'll go. Let's go. Let's strap it up. But I'm excited to get to work with our guys right now in the off season and get things going.
Well, you'll leave it to guys like me to say, well, that's an easy schedule, so minimum 10 wins in Morgan Scalley's first year as a head football coach, right?
Hey, listen, no one puts higher expectations on me than me. So, like I said, our whole deal is create the culture, and the results should speak for themselves.
Well, I have no doubt you will do so. We're very much looking forward to it. The very last thing before I let you go, are you going to let us media schlubs come and watch practice? Please, 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 can I watch one-on-one pass rush drills? Please let me watch real practice.
I'm going to maybe let others, but because I know that you'll be sitting there, well, shouldn't they do this? You'll get too involved, though. See, I can't have that.
Yeah, well, I'm already deeply offended that I didn't get a call like, hey, I need a coach specific to the walk-ons that are not ever actually going to do anything for us on the field. Can you come take care of those guys? I would be perfectly equipped for that, Morgan.
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
And yet I didn't get the phone call.
Come teach me some moves, some MMA moves, dude.
Well, look,
if
you ever need that for your guys, I will volunteer my time. That'd be a lot of fun. But
love it.
Thank you so much for your time today. Love you, man. Very excited for this new era of Utah football, and cannot wait to be watching every spring practice in its entirety under your new media policy as the head coach.
We'll chat about that later. Love you, brother.
All right, thanks. That's Morgan Scalley, Utah football head coach. He's 1-0 already in that bowl game, and a guy that, man, you could feel however you want to feel about the changing of the guard, but there's only one way to feel about him taking over, and that is optimistic and excited. All right, wrapping it up. Alex Jensen Coach's Show comes your way coming up on the other side. Utah and BYU coming up on Saturday in Provo. Running Utes nearly picked up their first Big 12 road victory, but they fell a little bit short against K-State after picking up their first win of the season in conference against TCU here in Salt Lake. So I'm sure Bill and Alex are going to discuss all those things. Do you find yourself, whenever Amy Donaldson rolls in the studio and we end up just having like a conversation about life, I end up thinking about it like all day, all night. Do you find I feel like you might be an introvert. I very much am. Are you?
Very much so. Very much so.
So we were talking about like the need for human connection and how like live events and sports in the community actually do breed that connection and make a big difference, because you can find your community in sports teams. I mean, college football to me is the biggest embodiment of this here in our state. Just go up to the tailgate lot and how many people almost attach their identity to their college football team. But when it comes to just simply the task of leaving your house to engage with other people, do you find yourself fighting that?
A little bit, yeah. I can be like, I don't want to say reclusive, but I can definitely be antisocial at sometimes, right? And Amy mentioned the pandemic, I think, played into that type of behavior for me, maybe made it a little worse. But I'm conscious of it, and people like Amy are helpful in that regard. So if I'm ever like cooped up too long, I get a little cabin fever and make sure I go see my friends, go see my family, do the thing. I mean, I have a very small circle, but I also, like you said, I feel like I get a little bit of that when I'm out at games and out at tailgates and with the community that we kind of have around here.
Thought Amy had some really good advice. If you missed it, I would encourage you to go download it, where she said you cannot be fearful and grateful at the same time. And I'll tell you what, we discussed this a little bit, and I've been doing a little bit more research and reading because I just became familiar that there are actually humans that will take a text message you send them and then put it into Chat GPT and then just use that message to send to you without even thinking about what they would do as an actual human, alive person. So I didn't know that was a thing. And as a result, I've kind of like been reading about what AI is really trying to do. And the line that keeps coming back to me is, we're not trying to replace another social media platform. We're trying to replace your mother. Like, they want all of your attention. They want all of your energy. They want every sort of pull that you have just to basically have a friend circle, a partner, everything that you need based off of an AI Chat GPT platform. I find it terrifying, dude, that this is like the direction societally we're going in. I'm old enough where I think I'll just be able to age into the next phase. What I'm more concerned about are like these young people that are being raised with these companions.
No, I'm with you there. It's concerning. And just to be clear, it's so they can get your data and sell stuff to you and keep your attention. It's not so they can be your friend. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's unnerving to me, but like you, I feel like I was born and raised in an area without cell phones, without the things. So
God's country, man.
So it was not even that, just the 90s, right? It was right before we got to a place where I think the lines have been kind of blurred. So at least think I can navigate it all right, but that's wishful thinking.
So the message is, fight the fear. Leave the house tonight, talk to the girl, make the phone call, make the effort, go to the game, go to the concert. And like, I'm getting anxious just talking about this, but we're all going to do it together. Okay. That's our goal. We're going to fight the fear. We're going to go out. We're going to do the thing. We're going to say the line. We're going to go to the event. You cannot be fearful and grateful at the same time. Amy, thank you for the message. All right, Alex Jensen Coach's Show coming up on the other side, Porter. Let's get our weekend started right. What comes up on a Friday show?
On a Friday show, we will talk a little RSL, a little soccer. Jason Christ stops by the program. Switch over to some college hoops. How about Ken Pomeroy back on the show? Sam Bruckhouse will recap college football, look ahead to the NFL playoff weekend, and then the PGA Tour gets going this week. Paul Pugmire, the latest there.
Yeah, golf is about to become very topical, so join us for a Friday show. Special thank you today to Kyle Bonagura, Andy Larson, the great Amy Donaldson, a little Sports Court 2, little Morgan Scally with Sean O'Connell. If you missed any of the sound from the show, go to the website. It is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. The ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 full hours, check out our podcast page. We're up wherever you get your shows. There are a lot of different platforms, a lot of options. Just search The Drive with Spence Checketts. Subscribe, rate, and review. Follow along. Say nice things, and give us all the stars they allow you to. It actually helps us out. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Thursday evening. Enjoy the Alex Jensen Coaches Show. We'll talk to you tomorrow right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.